Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Mongooli Movie Show. Today, I'm going to be joined by my buddy Adam. We're going to go over some of the movies and stuff that we've been looking at this week, some movies, some games, some TV shows. We're going to get into The Flash as a spoiler discussion, but that's not going to be till the very end, and I will have banners up so you will not get spoiled if you do not want to get spoiled. And until then, we're going to be discussing separating art from artist, when it's appropriate, when you should do it, when you shouldn't do it. Ultimately, we're not going to have a final answer on that, though. We're going to leave that up to you. We're just going to get our discussion out on it. Let us say what we want to say. Join us in chat if you've got anything you want to add to the conversation, and we'll get right into it. Bringing in Adam.
Hello.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing quite well.
Excellent. Good to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you just saw The Flash today, right?
Yes, just fresh out of the theater.
Fantastic. We're not going to get into that right now. As I said, we're going to save that to the very end, but I have not talked to Adam. I don't know what his take on it is. He might love it. He might hate it. We will find out at the end of this. Is there anything else you've been watching or playing this week?
So this week, I've been going hard into Star Trek Resurgence.
Ooh, what is that?
So that is the new Telltale style Star Trek game that came out a couple weeks ago.
Nice.
I was talking a little bit about it last week, but now I've beat it. I've loved it. I gotta say, it's one of the, if not the best Star Trek games ever made.
Wow.
It plays like a 9-hour TNG special, and you get to do everything that you would imagine, from mediating aliens conflicts to flying a starship, but all through a Telltale sort of stance. So you are talking to people, you're giving orders, you're making choices, the way that in Star Trek, that is how a lot of things get done.
For sure.
And then there's sections where you're actually flying a shuttle or shooting a phaser. It's a little more active than most Telltale games in that respect too. But the story has hit me so it really hits, actually, especially for one of these Telltale games where the choices don't always seem to really do anything. Like this, there's actually big consequences in this that impressed me.
Nice. Mm-hmm. Now, Telltale games is they did the Walking Dead one and the Batman one, right? I didn't get into the Batman one, but I loved those Walking Dead games. I thought they were a lot of fun. I played at least both of them, if not all three of them.
There's 4 of them, actually.
There's 4 of them. Okay, well, I definitely have not played 4, but I've played the first couple, and they were really engaging.
Some of the best stuff.
Yeah, very, very interesting storytelling, and you really connect with the characters because they do kind of die, and they kind of change depending on what your play style is. Mm-hmm. I did run into one issue where there was somebody stumbling towards me in the middle of the night, and I could not figure out how to get past them, and it turns out it was a bit of a glitch. So I had to wait for them to patch it first, and that was very frustrating. But they did patch it pretty quickly, so that was good. But it was just that initial, what am I doing wrong?
And that is the problem with these types of games, is historically they always have been very technically buggy. And this one is no different, honestly. Although I never encountered any game-breaking glitches like that, there were a couple times where I had to restart a section, or just a little interface icon wasn't popping up, or there was a lot of chugging along in the frame rate. But overall, it was nothing that ruined the experience for me.
Well, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
I like that it's the next generation as well, so that's a big plus for me personally. That was always my favorite.
It's I believe 1 year after Nemesis, so Riker is on the Titan. In fact, Riker, you get to see him and interact with the Titan and stuff.
Okay.
So it's very fresh. They're still wearing the that era uniform with the dark gray, the First Contact Nemesis sort of era uniform.
Nice.
Very cool.
Did you ever watch Picard?
Oh yes. Okay.
I watched the first season.
Okay.
I watched the first season and I liked it. I heard the second season was awful and confusing, and I just kind of let it go.
I agree.
And then I heard season 3 is amazing. Now, do I need to watch season 2 to get the most out of season 3, or can I just skip it if it's bad?
Kind of. There are a couple little bits and bobs and story threads that carry over, but honestly, you probably could just jump right into season 3, and just Google anything you're confused about, because there's really not that many things, and it is some of the best Star Trek since TNG, since the 90s.
Okay.
Wow. Like, honestly, I had chills, I had shakes and crying and shouting at the screen. It was it was wild because it came on the same day as Mandalorian. So
Oh, okay.
it was Picard season 3, Mandalorian season 3 back to back for me. And it was
I don't
very
think we've ever
wild to see. Yeah,
I don't
sorry.
think we've ever talked about Mandalorian season 3. Did you obviously watched it, but did you enjoy it?
I did enjoy it, although ultimately I found it to be the weakest of them all. I felt it lacked stakes, and I think it was a huge problem to reunite Din and Grogu in a completely different show. It completely just robbed any sort of like emotional momentum.
That's one of the things that TV in general is awful for and has been for a very long time, where they will end a season on a cliffhanger where like the band breaks up and oh my goodness, everybody's gone their separate ways. And then within 5 minutes of the next season, everybody's back to the exact same positions they were. And it's like, well, why did we even bother?
Exactly.
That show is even worse because they got the band back together on a totally different show.
Yeah. I feel like if you just rip that episode out, there's 2 episodes out of Book of Boba Fett, plop them in as like season 3 episode 1, and then just, artificially make the season longer, I think it would have played a lot better if it started with that, and we actually like it didn't get that like it undercut it is I think what I'm getting at.
Yeah, for sure. And it undercut both seasons or both shows because Book of Boba Fett was 3 episodes shorter than it should have been because it focused so much on Din. Now, don't get me wrong; those were my favorite episodes of Book of Boba Fett, but it kind of robbed you of what could have been a better Boba Fett story. And then if you only watch Mandalorian, you're really confused when you come back and all of a sudden they're together again, and he's got this male armor that he's never had before.
Yeah, they never.
Very weird decision on their part.
Incredibly strange. So it was wild watching that and then watching the new season of Picard and watching them get everything right. And I feel like it's one of the few times in history where Trek has unanimously like beat Star Wars in that historic conflict there.
Yeah. They've had their ups and downs, but that's fair.
For sure. Like just for this season of television. I wouldn't say overall, but during this season of television, Picard was easily better than Mando. And it was everything Mando kind of should have been, where they used nostalgia in a good way. There was stakes, even though you're dealing with these classic legacy characters. Nothing's gonna happen to Picard or Riker or whatever, but like,
I mean, if they were ever going to kill them, I think they've said season 3 is the last season, is it not?
Indeed it is. There will probably be some shit going forward, and I'm not saying Riker and Picard make it out, but you'll see there are some surprises there.
For sure. Sorry, spoilers for a 3-year-old show. Did Data die at the end of season 1? His body died, but they put him in a big computer or something?
Yes. So that was a very confusing thing that they did. And it ultimately got retconned in season 3 because, spoiler alert for Picard, but Data's in it, and it's like Data. So apparently what happened...
Like de-aged?
No. So here's the thing. They didn't have the money to de-age them, so they came up with a conceit to let Brent Spiner be Data in a humanoid body at his age.
Interesting.
Basically, the idea was that... So you saw season 1 of Picard, right?
I did. It was a while ago. I did.
Okay, so it ends with Picard. He dies, but his consciousness is transplanted into an artificial synthetic body.
Yeah, that's what I couldn't quite remember. I was like, I'm pretty sure he doesn't make it out, but
he's essentially it's like the ultimate mix between organic and synthetic. It's an artificial, like he's already had an artificial heart, so now he's got an artificial body. They use that tech to bring Data back and give him the last human experience that he never had. He's experienced death, he's experienced love, he's experienced loss, but he's never experienced old age, and he's never experienced like the finer things, like eating and drinking and like having messy neurons and chemicals swimming around in your brain. So he actually gets to be human in a way. He's still Data. He's still a robot. He's got his positronic brains and shit. But it was cool, and we get the gang back together.
Nice. Kind of segueing off of that, talking about supercomputers and neurons and all that. Any chance have you seen the new season of Black Mirror?
No, I have not. Although my friend Jake was talking about it, he had just finished it.
I'm not finished. I've only seen the first episode.
Okay,
but it's interesting. I won't spoil it. I'll try not to spoil it at all. The episode is called Joan is Awful. It's really interesting if you like Black Mirror. It's actually not nearly as dark as the show tends to go.
Okay.
But it was weird because it's made by Netflix. It films on Netflix, and they very much make Netflix the villain of the first episode.
That is fun.
Which is
like people do that. They
have
balls to bite the hand that feeds.
Well, they are the hand that feeds.
Yeah,
they're biting their own hand. I guess that's the whole point of the saying. Anyways, it was a really fun episode. It's got some great, not even cameos, but just like guest actresses in it. I think you'll have a good time with it. They're short. They're only like an hour long, and it's not nearly as dark or depressing as the show can be. So yeah. I liked it.
I'm excited to get around to it. I just need to carve out a couple hours to get through it. I'm excited. I know Aaron Paul is in an episode. I've seen a little bit of a trailer, and
okay,
I'm always happy to see that guy get work. I don't think he works enough.
What about, I can see him in the background there. What about the Arnold documentary, the 3-period Arnold documentary?
No, I have not gotten around to that actually.
Oh, you're killing
I assumed it was just going to be a lame sort of fluff piece, but my mom had been watching it. She was telling me some of the stuff that they're actually getting into, like the nitty-gritty details of like his come up in acting and the feud with Stallone and stuff. So I'm gonna get around to it actually, because that's the sort of stuff I want to hear.
I'm not done it yet. I've watched the first two. There's one left to go, but they break it up. So the first one is kind of like his early life and getting into bodybuilding. The second one is about like getting into movies and acting and whatnot. And then the third one will be his political rise and presumably kind of catching up to where he is right now.
Okay.
I don't know that much about him personally. I'm pretty confident he's divorced, right? Like Maria left him?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how that whole situation ended up too. Yeah. It's been a minute.
He's a very egocentrical character. Like he's got 100%. A big bravado behind him. But every time you see him nowadays, like he's just kind of sitting alone in front of a fireplace with a stogie. Like he still looks good.
Yeah.
But he's just kind of sitting alone in this massive house. And like, I don't want to say that the point is to make you feel sorry for him, but like he's definitely not on top of the world at the moment. You know what I mean? Like it does kind of have a bit of an edge to it. It's not 100% fluff, at least not so far. Maybe it'll end with him being like, I'm running for president. But so far, I'm really enjoying it. I'll admit, I'm kind of playing or watching it on my second screen while I'm playing Diablo and doing other things. I'm not like...
Still, though.
It's a documentary. I don't feel like you need to be like 100% invested. But it's interesting hearing about like early life and his father. And like, I didn't know that his brother died at such a young age in a car accident. And,
I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah, just...
Okay.
More to him than just, muscles. But it's really interesting. It's pretty fun. And it's got me... I'm talking to a couple of buddies about potentially doing a top 5 Arnold movies at some point.
Ooh, that would be good.
And especially after watching this documentary, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, there's a couple there that I missed that I definitely want to go back and really check out and deep dive into. Like I've never seen Twins or
me neither.
What's the other Danny DeVito one? Junior. Twins or Junior?
Oh yeah.
I just completely skipped those growing up, and I've never gone back. But it's like, yeah, okay, maybe it's worth the rewatch. Like. Just apparently Twins was a massive hit, so
and that one always did look funny to me. Like Junior was a little more like, I don't know how that one would hold up, but
could be interesting this day.
Could be.
Yeah.
But he has some absolute stone cold classics. Like Conan the Barbarian might be one of my favorite movies of all time. Predator's amazing. Recall.
Yeah.
God, Commando, the Terminator movies.
Yeah. I almost put Terminator 2 in the other day for the first time in at least a decade. And then I realized how much time I had and watched the Black Mirror episode instead. Because I wanted to sit down and just thoroughly enjoy it. I didn't want to have to do it in like 2 or 3 parts.
Which, that's fair.
Yeah. It feels like one that you need to kind of just soak into. It's one where I was thinking about it, or maybe somebody's mentioned it, but like if you could go back in time and like rewatch a movie for the very first time knowing nothing about it, Terminator 2 makes a really strong argument
Absolutely.
like we were too young at the time. Like you're even younger than I was, and I was too
Yeah,
young
it's
at the time.
100%. I wasn't even born when it came out.
That hurts my soul a little bit, but okay. So Arnold, obviously in Terminator 1, is the villain, and he's terrifying. Say what you want about the graphics nowadays, but he's a good bad guy.
100%.
And then you bring in the second one, and like today, we all know that he's the hero. Of course he is. He's been the hero for 7 Terminators, but that's not how that movie was advertised. That movie is advertised as he's still the villain. And it's not until they're in the hallway and he like get down and shoots over the kid that you're like, wait, what's going on? Like you assume the kid's going to take the corner, and be stuck between this cop and this Terminator, and then you're going to see what actually happens. Like I would love to have that reveal in a theater full of people who had no idea that was coming.
100%, because I mean that was always spoiled for me. I always grew up seeing them together, you know, seeing it referenced. And by the time I finally watched the movies, I watched the first Terminator, so I was more surprised that he was a bad guy in that, because my perspective was that he was always an ally. So watching the first Terminator, like I kind of got the inverse twist of that. Kind of weird how time did that. It sort of flipped it.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, it was a twist at the time, but like you wouldn't even consider it nowadays. Like it's just well known. Like of course Arnold's the good guy.
Yeah, it's like Darth Vader being Luke's father. Like that's not a twist.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Like I can't, like, that's not a surprise for anybody, right?
No,
like, my kids know that, and they've never even seen the movie.
And for the rest of time, everybody will know that. People will be born with that knowledge. Like
for sure. I've also been starting this show called The Diplomat. Have you heard of that one?
No,
it's
a
Netflix show. It stars Carrie Russell, Felicity.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm only 1 episode in. My wife blew through it really quickly, and then kind of like, you gotta watch this, you gotta watch this, you gotta watch this. Okay. One of my favorite shows of all time is The West Wing, and she's like, this is giving me West Wing vibes. I want to watch West Wing again. I'm like, okay, fair enough.
Nice.
If that's how the vibes it's giving off. It's a bit more not thrillery, but like it's based off of a bombing, right? So it's all about kind of dealing with that. So it's less purely political and a bit more.
There's something going, like there's a big threat happening, sort of thing. Which
there's a mystery to be solved for sure.
Yeah. I could dig that. Carrie Russell's pretty good. Like I've always liked seeing her. She's not somebody that I like follow her career, but every time she pops up in something, I'm like, oh shit.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, there's been a couple of roles with her that I've enjoyed. I'm not gonna say I watched Felicity back in the day for like the first season or so. I enjoyed it well enough at the time.
I've heard good things.
A little bit before your time, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And I never went back to it.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. Oh, here we go. Amy says, Diplomat was excellent. I love no nonsense and a little disconnected she can be. I don't think I'm getting that full comment there. I love no nonsense and a little how disconnected she can be.
Yeah, that was.
Anyways, anything else you've been doing recently?
Oh, so I before watching The Flash, I decided to rewatch the Snyder Cut.
Okay. Oh, that's a commitment.
Absolutely. I mean, although I will say that is one of my favorite movies. So that's a 4-hour chunk of my life that I will happily set aside.
Fair enough.
But I wanted to be able to compare and contrast, seeing as like I think chronologically Flash would be like the next big one after that. And I mean, I don't know if it's a spoiler or not, but that is the canon version now. They explicitly reference the Snyder Cut in the Flash movie.
Yeah.
So I wanted to see also how they detailed the effects. And I gotta say, I miss Zack Snyder. I miss Zack Snyder.
We will get there for sure, but that's definitely one of the talking points.
But it holds up very, like, it's such a long movie, the Snyder Cut is, but it blows my mind how badly Warner Brothers fumbled it originally. Like, every time I watch it, every time I think about it, like, just imagining if this came out in 2017 instead of the weird movie that we got.
For sure.
I mean, there would have still been haters, but I think it would have, like, DC would be in a much better place than it is today. I don't think it would have been stumbling on life support for 10 years. 7 years, however long it's been.
It's hard to talk about the future of DC without going into the Flash and
That's
spoilers.
fair.
So like, I definitely want to, but it's just like, let's just
we can put a pin
push
in
that back just a little bit. Put a pin in it. We'll get back to it for 100%. Sure. So I've seen Justice League, the Zack Snyder one, once.
Okay.
And went out and picked it up on 4K, and it's like it's on my list at some point. But again, it's one I want to like set some time aside.
And of course,
unfortunately, I can't really watch that one with my kids. It's a little bit.
It's a lot, yeah. I mean, it's technically R-rated, and I don't even know like how many kids would be interested in. It's very dour and serious.
My kids love the MCU, and I'm not comparing the two things.
Okay.
My kids love the MCU. Have not watched anything of the DCU. I showed them the Flash trailer. Like, hey, you want to go see this in theaters? And they're like, I mean, I like going to the theater, so sure. I'm like, that's not a yes. I'm not paying $40 for that answer.
No, that's fair. That's fair. So yeah, I can't imagine that one would go over well then.
I think they would have had a good time with Flash. I don't think they would have understood anything that was happening with it.
Probably not.
But I mean, it was. I don't know that you need to know a whole lot about Flash to enjoy it. I think you can walk into it relatively blind. It's kind of like Into the Spider-Verse. You'll just get more out of it if you're a fan.
Yeah, 100%. I was again, it's hard to get into it too much without getting into it, but I was impressed with overall how they did it, how they handled the storyline, and the fact that they did almost do an origin story without doing an origin story, which was interesting.
I'm gonna fight you on that one pretty hard, but we'll get to that later.
Okay.
The one thing, I don't want to get into it too hard, but I will say I've been reading Dark Web recently.
Ooh, yes.
It's a crossover between Spider-Man and X-Men, which is why I was like, okay, I like both those characters. I haven't read a Spider-Man comic in forever, not a recent one at least.
And you couldn't have picked a worse one. You could not have picked a worse one from what I've heard.
That's what I'm hearing. It's written by Zeb Wells. The penciler is John Romita Jr., whose legendary father just recently passed away. Yeah. And I mean, John Romita Jr. is a legend in his own right.
I was going to say, he's a legend. And he's very like... some people don't like his style, but I love it personally.
The story feels incredibly 90s, which is admittedly when I got into Spider-Man, so like that does kind of make sense. And it focuses around Ben Reilly coming back, which is for people who don't know the Spider-Clone. I promise I will not be on comics for very long, but I just wanted to touch on this. My issue with the story isn't even necessarily the story itself, although it is kind of cheesy and very 90s. The art is actually pretty decent for what it is. My issue is I've never seen, like, trade paperbacks like this are a collection of many comic books, just in case we get people who have no idea what we're talking about. Usually, when you have a story collected like this, they will put it in chronological order so you can read the story the way that it makes sense. Because come out monthly, so you can read the story like X-Men to Spider-Man to Venom that way.
Oh no.
For whatever reason, they decided to put all the Spider-Mans at the beginning, followed by all the Venoms, followed by all the X-Men, followed by the actual event Dark Web. So Madeline Pryor is one of the villains in this.
Mm-hmm.
And you just all of a sudden start book 3 of Amazing Spider-Man, and she's standing next to Scott Summers and being like, all right, if we're going to fight this enemy, we need to do it together. And you're like, wait, what did I miss? Like, you're just like going back, like, when did they become friends? Like, what is going on here? I finished the Spider-Man version. Next is Venom, and I honestly don't even know if I want to keep going. So it's just like, I don't understand what's happening. This is just so poorly put together. And it's not that it's even, like, it's not a good story, but it's not the worst story. But, like,
to make you work to actually read it, like, that is so hostile.
Oh, it's just painful.
Oh my god. I honestly can't believe that they would do that. Like, there's a reason that everything's been in chronological order for the past, like, 30 years of graphic novels. Like,
yeah. Now, like, you work in a comic store. You know that I buy a lot of my comics from you.
Indeed.
I do sometimes buy from Amazon, though, because it's not very easy to get downtown London right now.
For sure.
I'm wondering if this is a weird, like, bootleg. Like, I wonder if I got scammed by somebody, because, like, this is the first time in decades of reading comics that I've seen one put together this poorly. The bindings are good, but, like, just the way they actually show it, it's just like,
did it.
It's
I'll
just
uh,
weird.
I'll check a copy of Dark Web when I go to work tomorrow. I'll let you know because that would suck if you did get a weird bootleg copy.
It would
But
explain it, and I would have a lot more faith in Marvel if that was the case. If I just was an idiot and got screwed,
oh,
but like,
Marvel
oh, I
has been
turned the
making
page. It
some,
was like, ooh.
Marvel's been making some bonehead calls lately, so it also would not surprise me if they would do that.
That's fair.
You know, for some reason, some accountant thought it was better. Some person be like, "Oh, let's just put them in alphabetical order instead of chronological order." That makes sense, right?
Sure. Spider-Man 3 comes before Spider-Man 2 because
Oh
alphabetical.
God. Oh, it's that bad? I thought
No,
you
no,
just
no, no,
meant
no,
like
no, no.
all the
I'm
Spider-Mans. Okay.
taking your joke and running with it.
Gotcha. I was gonna say, like, oh my God.
No, it's not quite that bad. Last thing I've got, I talked about it a little bit last week, but it's more fun to talk with somebody. Have you ever seen or heard of the movie Fall?
I have heard of it. I meant to watch it, but I actually never got around to it. It
So
looked crazy.
My daughters wanted to watch it.
Okay.
And so I was like, well, it's rated pretty highly. There's somebody in their class had seen it. So I was like, I'll give it a try and I'll let you know how bad it is. And it's not too bad as far as a quote unquote horror movie goes.
Yeah, it is
bit of
PG-13.
language, bit of blood, but it's not too bad.
Yeah. It looked terrifying though.
I am so ridiculously afraid of heights that I was honestly getting vertigo just watching it. Like I was watching it by myself, and there were times where I'd have to like sit and play on my phone for a little bit, and just like, okay, just breathe.
Yep.
I watched it again with my kids. They didn't quite make it all the way through it. They made most of the way through it before one of them tapped out.
Okay.
And it was different watching it with other people, or maybe it was different because I knew what was coming. Either way, the second time through, it was a breeze. But that first time was one of the, I don't even want to say worst, because it wasn't like it was unenjoyable, but just physically uncomfortable movie viewings I've ever had.
Which, I mean, I have to imagine is what they were going for, which, I mean, like, to be able to relate that experience so well is, I'm sure, exactly what they wanted. But I felt almost the same thing just watching the trailer. Like, watching that trailer a couple months ago, I was like, oh, God, I got to check this out.
Yeah. And the girls do not act afraid of heights at all. Like, they're on top of this tower, and like, I would be bear hugging that pole the entire time. And like, they've got rope, but at no point do they tie themselves to the thing. Like, even when they're sleeping. And I'm like, that's just really poor decision making. Like,
oh, I can tell that's a movie that's gonna have me screaming at the screen then.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those where you're just frustrated for the people. But that being said, like, I do recommend it. If you're looking for something not slashery, but still kind of high tension, it's pretty good. I did thoroughly enjoy it.
I can dig it.
Despite the fact that I hated every second of it.
Did you hear, it was a little minor controversy, but they filmed it intending for it to be an R-rated movie. So there was a lot more F-bombs and stuff, a lot more stuff like that. But somewhere in post, the studio decided it should be PG-13, and they couldn't afford to reshoot anything. So they used AI to like fix lip movements in the shots they had already shot to make them say frick or whatever replacement word that they threw in there.
I did notice watching it that they do say frick a lot in the movie, and I was like, that's interesting that they purposefully didn't go harder than that, because they definitely, I'm pretty confident they do drop at least one F-bomb.
Okay, which would keep them safe within the PG-13 rule. So that's exactly why, because the AI fricked a lot of it.
And like the blonde girl's character, Hunter, I think her name is.
Okay.
No part of her character comes across as somebody who would say frick. Like, you
I
know what I mean?
Know anybody that would say frick. There's very few people who I think would genuinely.
If my kids are around.
Yeah, sure. But in a life-threatening situation like that, I bet you even if your kids are around, they're
that's fine.
Hearing some stuff.
Yeah, they'd be learning some words. Actually, no, they wouldn't. They could teach me some words. Yeah, do you want to dive into the main topic now that we're half an hour in?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Ooh, here we go. So what we wanted to talk about today, with The Flash coming out, it seems very topical to be talking about separating the art from the artist. Now, what I mean by that is there's a lot of great art that exists in this world where the further you dive into the artist and the person who created it, the darker and scummier that can sometimes get. Now, some people will take that and be like, well, I'm just going to boycott the art, then I'm never going to listen to that again or watch that again or read it again. And that's totally fine. If that's the decision you come to, that's 100%
valid.
Thank you. I was like, had so many V words going on my throat. That's 100% valid. That's an option available to you. But is it the right option for everybody? Should you be forcing that opinion on other people? The Flash came out this weekend, and because of Ezra Miller, which we'll get into, one of the factors around it, one of them being Ezra Miller, did not do very well. I don't know if you would say that it bombed, but it definitely failed to meet expectations. Yeah. Raising only $55 million on its opening weekend, it actually did worse than Black Adam did, and Black Adam was considered a absolute bomb. Like it did not do well. We saw it together. We both had a good enough time with it. Yeah. Neither one of us thought it was amazing, but we enjoyed ourselves.
I've watched it one more time since, and I feel like that's pretty much my fill.
No, that's totally fair. I don't know that I will go back to it anytime soon. Maybe if I do an entire DCU rewatch. Yeah. But other than that, I don't know that that's something I'm going to be going back to. Whereas The Flash, I will absolutely go back to. I hope that it does end up becoming profitable. But $55 million on its opening weekend is rough. For context, Spider-Verse opened up to $120 million, more than double it. Only 2 weeks before, 3 weeks before. So
it was honestly such a bad idea for them to put Flash so close to Spider-Verse. They lost that gamble.
This entire summer is going to be an absolute murderer's row for movies, though. You've got way too many good movies coming out way too close together. They're definitely going to cannibalize off each other. So that is going to be an issue most of the summer. The cream is going to rise to the top, and I mean, we'll get to there, but like for me, Spider-Verse was better than Flash, so it does make sense that it did have
easily.
And it had the better pedigree going in. Like Into the Spider-Verse was an award-winning movie, amazing.
Yeah.
And like the DCU's been struggling, so it does kind of make sense that people were iffy going into this.
100%.
That being said, a part of it, I'm sure, was the Ezra Miller of it all, and we'll get into that. We're going to start off, however, talking about we picked six artists that we'd like to talk about. Each one a little bit different in the way that they create their art and a little bit different in their controversies. So hopefully we're not just going to talk about the same type of actor 7 times in a row. The first one we want to talk about is J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling, born as Joanne Rowling, is obviously the author of the Harry Potter franchise. She's written those 7 books between 1997 and 2007 that have sold over 600 million copies, translated to 84 languages. They've spawned 8 different movies, 3 spin-off movies, and she co-wrote a play with Jack Thorne and John Tiffany. She is, not to mention Hogwarts Legacy, which just came out, and I don't even know how many other games. I didn't even try to look them all up because I just figured there was so many different cell phone games and other types.
There's at least 2 or 3 for every book/movie, I would say.
Exactly. So it's safe to say that she has spawned an empire.
Billion-dollar enterprise.
Yeah, and that's just Harry Potter. She's written 24 books total. That's only 7 of them. Mm-hmm. Some of them are written under an alias, Robert Galbraith.
I believe most of them are,
Which, it's her prerogative. I know a lot of authors do that, even like Stephen King and so on. So there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But it's just interesting, of her works of art. And they are art. Whether you agree with her or not, her books are art. Of all of that, all the things that she's made, I don't really know where I'm going with this, but it's just mind-boggling how much this one person has created, how much of an impact this one person has had on the entire world.
For sure.
Up until recently, mostly for good. There's a lot of people who read those Harry Potter books as kids or as teenagers and took really great messages from them at the time before learning about J.K. Rowling and some of the awful viewpoints that she has in the world.
I was one of those kids. I was 11 years old reading the first Harry Potter book when he was 11 years old, and I grew up with Harry Potter. Those were the first real novels that I read and opened me up to a love of reading.
That's awesome. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that being your start and that creating
Oh,
that
for
world
sure.
of fantasy for you, and that opening your world up to books and reading like that. That's phenomenal to hear. I was a little too old for them, so by the time
Mhm.
I actually first heard, I think the movie was the first time I heard about Harry Potter, and
Yeah.
then the storm took over, and every coworker I had was reading them, and it was this huge thing. So I've never gotten into them. It's just not my world. It's not a choice. It's not a blackmailing J.K. Rowling. They're just not for me.
Which is fair.
Yeah. Now, have you read all? You read all the books? You said you grew up reading them.
Yes, so I've read all the books. I have not read the Cursed Child play that
Okay.
she did later. But I've read all the books. I've read the ancillary materials. She did the Fantastic Beasts guidebook and a history of Quidditch and other weird things like that as a kid. I was obsessed with mythology, so I even had this it was the mythological history of the Harry Potter world. So it kind of went through all the references to real mythology and real alchemists and the origins of certain turns of phrase that this historian then broke down and kind of showed you the origins of all these things. So I was deeply into this world as a child.
That's really cool. It's funny you say you didn't. You haven't seen the play, I assume, either.
No, haven't seen the play, haven't read the script or whatever they released it as.
Ironically, I have not seen Fantastic Beasts. I just couldn't care less. I've seen the
Okay.
original movies.
The
The play is my favorite thing in the Wizarding world. I went to
Okay.
see it with my wife, my kids, and my niece and nephew.
Interesting.
Absolutely loved it. Phenomenal play. Really enjoyed it. Don't know that much about Harry Potter, so I kind of was able to walk in relatively blind.
Which that's fair, yeah.
And it was still very enjoyable for me. So now that was co-written by her and two others, as I mentioned, but
Yeah.
it's everybody can get a little bit out of it, right? It's not, most of it's not for me. If it had just been the movies, I would have just written it off as not being for me. I had no interest in reading the books. I
For
liked
sure.
the play. And the play, I have one of the t-shirts. It's like a skull with the Slytherin snake coming out of it.
Okay.
Only Harry Potter thing I own in the entire world. So be it.
That's pretty cool, though.
So for years,
Mhm.
her books were a source of good in the world. She was seen as a light. Harry Potter was incredibly famous. If you grew up in the 2000s, you know. And yet, in 2006, sorry, trying to do too many things at once. In 2016, my apologies, somebody started to notice that she was liking a lot of anti-trans tweets. She hadn't written anything at that point that I can find, but she just started liking things, and people were picking up on it and kind of being like, well, wait a second.
Yeah.
A lot of people see the Harry Potter books as an allegory for transgenderism, because you've got somebody who, I mean, he used the word muggle, but he didn't know that word at the time, but somebody who doesn't fit in the world that he's surrounded in, doesn't really know why, can't get along with the family he's in, just knows that something's wrong. And it's not until he opens up he gets invited to this fantastical school, realizes this is who his parents are, and he kind of comes into his own as this totally other being. That's kind of how he experiences the world and flourishes and grows.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of kids, again, I never read it, but from what I can tell, well, you can probably answer this better. A lot of kids saw that as how they see the world, whether they're non-binary or transgendered or just regular kids.
I find I see in my life, most of the people that are or were still fans into their adult years are almost all of the LGBT community, because I believe that those themes resonated so well in that community. And so I feel partially that's a reason why the they felt like there was a big betrayal when they saw that sort of behavior coming from JK, because it seems so alien compared to what she was writing in the books. The books have some weird bits here and there, but some of it I think is people reading into stuff. Some of it is probably might be merit to it, but
the banks being run entirely by goblins always hit me a little bit weird.
Yeah,
but
it's a
each
little
their own.
There's a little much, and then there's also the house elves are essentially indentured slaves.
Yep.
And Hermione is mocked for daring to want to free them, and it's never it doesn't come back around either that she's ultimately right. She's still always seen as a bit of a weirdo for wanting to upset that. So there's a couple things that are strange
in the stories, but overall, most people
yes.
saw them as good.
Exactly.
So 2016, she starts liking other people's tweets, but that's as far as that goes, as far as I can tell. Then in 2019, a friend of hers, or somebody she decided to stand up for, gets fired for the tweets they're making, and J.K. Rowling gets on her soapbox and tweets out her support for this person. Person was Maya Forstater. I might be pronouncing that wrong. I apologize.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to pronounce it either.
And that's when the floodgates really open. The trans community, the LGBTQ community, all come out against her, and she doubles down and doubles down and doubles down, to the point where a lot of people who grew up with her books, a lot of people who loved her books, a lot of people who have tattoos and have named their children after characters, are now feeling absolutely betrayed by her and have come out against her. They have been trying to take Harry Potter away from her to a certain extent, in the sense that you've got the Pro Quidditch League, which I can't believe is a real thing.
That is
and they're
hilarious.
Changing the name of it to Quad Ball, I believe.
Yeah, I was reading that. Yep.
It's just really interesting the way that the community has turned so hard on her, and like, admittedly, for good reason. I get it. I'm not defending her by any stretch, but it
is wild. Like, when has that ever happened where like such an entrenched community has completely done a 180, and even some of them try to take it from her. Like even Hogwarts Legacy had no direct like input from JK, and in fact did things actively to distance the game from including prominent trans characters and allowing you to be trans or non-binary yourself in the game. Like,
now, I didn't play the game. You did.
I did.
Quite a bit, right?
Yeah.
My understanding was you can't specifically be non-binary. Like, you do technically have to choose a male or a female dorm to sleep in. Like, you have to decide to be a witch or a wizard.
I mean, yes, I guess. Although it does allow you to like sort of swap masculine and feminine body shapes and voices, which allows, I mean, more than 99% of other games. So it's something.
In the character creation screen, you can make your character have male or female traits, or both, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big step for a kid growing up who has never seen themselves in a video game.
Yeah.
That's actually great. I think that's a great source of good, but it's attached to this evil.
Yes. Or at least, like it always will be, even as far as they try to distance themselves from that, it always will be attached. There'll always be that specter looming over the entire franchise.
Yeah. And in fact, the video game creators, designers, actually put the very first canonical transgender character in the game, correct?
Yes, they did. Serona Ryan is her name. Yeah.
I think that's great. I think any amount of inclusion you can have, especially in a game that's designed for young adults, is only going to be better for them to see the different kinds of walks of life. You don't have to play as any of the things. It doesn't force it down your throat.
Yeah, exactly.
But for the kids who want it, who want to see themselves on screen for the very first time in their lives, I think that's an incredibly important step.
For sure. Like, I am a straight cis white male, so I've always been catered to in that way. But the way I've been able to relate to it is that, like, I always get incredibly excited whenever I see a Canadian or Canada appear in a movie. That's like such bare level, unimportant representation. But I still get really, really happy when I see it. So I can only like imagine what it must feel like for, something of greater consequence than that,
Yeah. There was, right after the Last of Us episode 3 came out, that was the episode with the gay couple.
Yes.
I remember seeing somebody post on Facebook, just a random, not somebody on my friends list, just somebody post on a random theme, and sometimes you scroll through the comments. And he was saying, "This is such a ridiculous episode. How am I supposed to connect to two gay men in this love story? Like, this is so hard for me. I can't do it." And my brain was like, I can't tell if you're trolling or not, because you just 100% proved why there needs to be the gay men on screen, because you've got so many gay people out there who don't have anybody to connect to. So of course you need to have role models for everybody, or not even role models, but just like representation for everybody.
Yeah.
And it was like, I want to engage so hard, but at the same time, like, you're a random Facebook person. It's just not worth my time.
Yeah, exactly. Why waste the time on that?
And if he doesn't see it, I'm not gonna be able to get him to see it.
Probably not.
So
But absolutely, and I mean that was such a powerful episode. I've watched it twice. I've watched the whole season of Last of Us twice, and that episode always has stuck with me. Like, that is a beautiful love story, straight or gay, you know, like,
Yeah,
so
for sure.
it's important stuff.
Yeah. Now, we're not going super deep on any of these people, but from what you know of J.K. Rowling, has this impacted your ability to enjoy the novels, enjoy the games, enjoy the movies?
So it's been a complicated situation for me because it does sort of sour things, but I will always cherish the memories, if that makes sense.
100%.
Like, I don't really see myself going back and reading the books anytime soon. I still have them all on my shelf, but I don't really see that happening. I might rewatch the movies. I have fond memories of the movies, and I feel like that's distanced enough.
For sure.
I guess the big litmus test was Hogwarts Legacy, and I bought it, so I guess that should tell you something. Because ultimately, I thought it looked like a good game, and I like enough of the Harry Potter universe. I was willing to check it out, mostly to support the developers, because it looked like they spent a lot of time and had made a good game. And ultimately, like, J.K. Rowling already got her licensing money from it, so...
And that was a point I was going to make. Like, with the video game, with movies in general, there's so many people working towards building it, making that machine. If you starve everybody, like if you try to hurt J.K. Rowling by not buying the game or not watching the movie, you're hurting so many other people so much more. She's already a billionaire.
Yeah.
She doesn't care about your $5.
Yeah.
But the guy who helped develop that game, his job might depend on it.
Exactly. They're not going to, especially in game development where things are very fickle. If that game was a bomb, those people would be out of work, like working at McDonald's or something.
Yeah.
You know, like it's an incredibly fickle industry, and if a game looks good, I put my money where my mouth is, regardless of anything. Like, even, I mean, I guess this is getting a little off topic, but with Blizzard Activision, there's a lot of controversy going on there. Diablo 4 also looks good. So it's like, right? But that's a whole other can of worms there.
Yeah, we'll leave that one for now. But that's a good point. I didn't think about bringing Blizzard up because that's a whole company that's been kind of demonized.
Right.
But
just thought about that.
Yeah. J.K. Rowling, as I said, has never been my cup of tea. Mm-hmm. So it's not so much that I'm boycotting her, so much as that I'm just continuing to ignore her.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yep.
And that's
Sorry.
As I kind of like, that's kind of how I deal with it too. Like, ultimately, I just ignore her. She can go off and do whatever she wants to do. She can scream at the heavens. I'll make fun of her, but I might also buy a Harry Potter game if it looks good, or watch a Harry Potter show if it looks good. I might not. It will have to be good, though. I won't just check it out on the sake of the fandom, but it will have to actually be a good piece of art to actually move me enough to want to watch it. So there's some level of impediment there, but not enough for me to boycott or anything.
Okay. Who do you want to talk about?
So I was thinking we go Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey has had many
fire.
Yeah, exactly. Many allegations against him. I believe it was upwards of 30 different men have accused him of sexual battery, sexual assault, all sorts of things. Some of them were underage. Some of them were accusing him of grooming them. Recently, the big publicized trial or story was Anthony Rapp versus him. Anthony Rapp, an actor from Star Trek Discovery, to tie it all back around to Star Trek, accused Spacey of some pretty lewd stuff at a party wherein Anthony was 14, I believe, and Spacey was a man. And that's yet
to be seen.
Yeah, exactly. That was the start of all of this craziness. And then Spacey just kept digging a hole. He had a very weird apology where he deflected by saying he was gay and drunk, and he didn't remember that, and he's sorry if he did do it, which was a very weird thing to say as an apology. Either say
Well, he
nothing or,
also,
like,
excuse me, he also chose to that moment to come out as gay, didn't he? To try and
yes,
change the conversation, and
yes.
nobody took that well.
Well, exactly, right? Because that's just that famous, infamous link of homosexuality and pedophilia that the right has always tried to link them to, which is pretty gross behavior.
Well, not only that, but it felt like he was trying to sweep it under the rug. Like,
Yes,
yes, I did these awful things, but also celebrate me because I'm gay.
yes,
And it's like,
exactly.
no,
It
no.
was weird. But I believe it was earlier this year that they had that court case in New York, specifically the Anthony Rapp court case.
Yep.
And I believe, I think Kevin was acquitted. There was no evidence. The judge ruled that there was not enough evidence to convict, so the case was essentially thrown out. And Anthony Rapp is going to have to deal with that, because essentially it's such a hard thing to prove.
Well, and the time distance between it.
Yes,
that happened in
that's
the
it, right?
80s or something?
Exactly. So there really wasn't any hard evidence. It was his word against Kevin's. But going into the next couple of months, he's got more trials with these other allegations in England and other places. So he's not out of the fire yet.
Yeah. He was the first one, and I apologize if you're about to get into this, but he was the first one of these people who really felt like he was being covered up for a long time.
Yes.
And what I say by that is, I remember years ago, at least a decade, because I haven't watched Family Guy in forever.
Oh, yeah.
Stewie making a joke about Kevin Spacey, and I had no idea what they were talking about.
Yeah,
but then this Anthony Rapp thing came out, and you're like, oh, this isn't only a thing. Like, this is well known. Like, this is something people talk about behind closed doors.
It was an open secret in Hollywood, apparently, for decades at least. Yeah. And I mean, it was like a Harvey Weinstein sort of thing where everybody respected Kevin so much. He had so much power in the town that nobody could say anything, or nobody wanted to, or anything. Any allegations were squashed or ignored, or what have you. And he was also one of the first to really have real consequences for this too. He was kicked off of the last season of House of Cards. He was scrubbed from that one movie and replaced with Christopher.
All the money
Plummer.
In the world.
All the money in the world. Yes. They replaced him with Christopher Plummer.
Which, like, that was after the movie was almost ready to come out in theaters. Yeah. Like, the movie was done, and they went back and were like, "Nope."
Yeah, we got to recoup some money from this.
Yeah. Oh, they would have got nothing. And I mean, they probably got some goodwill money from people who were just happy to be like, "Yo, good job getting rid of that guy."
Yeah, exactly. And it probably wasn't the most expensive movie in the world, but
and I'm sure he wasn't the lead actor either. But
yeah, I never did wind up watching it.
Me neither.
But it was wild, especially I was a huge fan of House of Cards and very invested in that, and so I was surprised to see actual consequences happen for this, because I know I wasn't the only one. House of Cards was a huge hit for Netflix, their first huge hit, even.
I'll admit I fell off on House of Cards before it got to that point.
Okay.
But then after that point, I was like, well, not going back now.
Which there's no reason to.
Yeah.
And that, I'll sort of segue into that. Spacey is one where that has really affected my enjoyment of his work. It's hard for me to watch House of Cards now. It's hard for me to watch something like Baby Driver. Did you watch Baby Driver?
I've seen Baby Driver. I've debated going back to it for the other performances.
Yes.
But ultimately, it's just one where I'm like, I just keep finding something else to watch.
Yeah, right? I watched it maybe about a year ago, so the allegations were still out. I watched it with my brother, and it made the experience a very different experience watching it, knowing some of these allegations against Kevin. All the times he's calling baby. Even just that coming out of his mouth is strange to hear. The only one I think I would go back to confidently would be Seven, because that's such a great movie. Yeah. And he plays a despicable person in that. So it's I can almost transfix my feelings of him as a person onto the character.
Well, and he's such a small role in that movie.
Yes, yes.
Like
You're not
it is
watching
very
him.
much a Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman movie.
Yes.
And then he just kind of comes in at the end as the creepy killer.
It's not a lead.
Spoilers.
I probably wouldn't watch K-Pax again.
No.
Did you ever watch that movie?
Totally forgot about it until you mentioned it. The
Well,
one,
yeah.
sorry.
I was just gonna say, like, that was one where he led it as a very weird, strange man who befriends a child, and I feel like that's gonna have very different connotations watching now.
For sure.
Not to mention, it was just a weird movie.
So I have a movie poster, 100 movies you have to watch before you die, kind of thing, and you scratch them off as you go. One of the movies on there is The Usual Suspects.
Oh,
which I remember absolutely loving when it first came out. The Kaiser Sose, the twist, it was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
But between Bryan Singer and Kevin Spacey,
yes,
that's a hard one to want to go back to and watch. And now Bryan Singer is the director and I think the writer, so you're not seeing him, but you're watching Kevin the entire time. And it's just one of those, like, I haven't tried to go back and watch it, but like,
me neither. But
that's two really big strikes against it.
I could see it. I could definitely see that being a hard one. I definitely haven't had any real desire to go back and watch it, which sucks because it is actually such a good movie.
Oh yeah.
And unfortunately, Bryan Singer is pretty talented. He's made some good movies. He's also a scumbag. But I just ultimately with this sort of stuff, I just find it so unfortunate that such talented people have to squander it by being awful. Like, all you have to do is do nothing. Just be a nice, normal person and live your life, you know? That's not enough for some people.
And when it comes right down to it, there's a certain amount of, like, where there's smoke, there's fire, right? Like some of these people, like, maybe they're completely innocent, but like, why is there so many allegations against them?
Yeah.
And if it's just somebody trying to get popular, like, why does Tom Hanks have no allegations against him and a 50-year career? Exactly. And then somebody else have like 1,000 allegations and a 2-year career, and you're just like,
exactly. Like,
even if the judges acquit you, some part of my brain is still gonna be like, yeah, there's fire there somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Because especially with these sorts of things, it is so hard to prove in a legal way with these sort of sex crimes. Like, they're incredibly hard to prove in a legal,
for sure,
in a court of law. So it's almost, these people almost always get away with it.
Well, and especially, like, I don't blame Anthony Rapp because he was a kid at the time.
Yes.
He was a very famous person, very influential, very popular.
The
climate, exactly. Like, Hollywood wasn't ready to hear any of that. So I get why he waited so long to say something. But also, by waiting so long to say something, it's almost impossible to prove that anything happened. It will literally be your word against his. Maybe somebody else at the party, but everybody at the party is going to be drunk and 30 years removed.
Exactly, right? I don't remember something at a party 5 years ago, let alone 30 years ago. So
yeah,
it's unfortunate, but I mean, at least he did something. At least he got the word out, and I think that might have been the most valuable part of that, is that once he spoke up, so many other people spoke up, and one of these charges is going to probably stick, I would think. Because Spacey is somebody who I firmly believe has done most of this stuff. I have not seen any evidence to the contrary, and everything he does is very creepy and confirms that he's the kind of person that would probably do this stuff.
Yeah, especially looking back with hindsight.
Exactly, right?
Shall we move on?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so the next one I wanted to bring up, again, we're going to try and switch up each person a little bit, get a bit of a different perspective, is Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon's a screenwriter, director, producer, and comic book writer.
Yes.
He's been doing multiple projects since the early 90s. He's responsible for writing the Astonishing X-Men line, which is actually pretty well done.
Amazing. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah. The Cabin in the Woods. He directed Much Ado About Nothing. The first Avengers movie, which is darn near perfect. Age of Ultron, which is definitely not. Justice League, which is barely watchable.
Oh, God.
But he's most famous for his creation in TV, which includes Firefly, Buffy, and the spin-off Angel.
Yeah.
Buffy, growing up in the 90s, was a mainstay. Everybody was watching it. It was a revolutionary show starring a very strong female protagonist. And it was a lot of fun. It was action. It was a little bit of horror. It was very funny. It was kind of everything you wanted as a teenage boy in the 90s. And I think that the strong female protagonist is something that a lot of people connected to, or a lot of women connected to. And it, excuse me, I cannot get this thing out of my throat. And it's another one of the situations where people feel very betrayed by this, finding out that years later, sorry, I kind of jumped the gun on that a little bit. In 2016, sorry? Hello?
Oh, I haven't said anything. Hello? Yeah, I'm still here. Yep.
My bad. Apologies. In 2016, Zack Snyder was directing Justice League. Yes. Zack Snyder had a family emergency that he had to deal with, and he removed himself from the project. WB brought in Joss Whedon to kind of lighten the tone a little bit because Justice League and the Zack Snyder universe were very dark.
Yes.
He came in and we started hearing rumors of production problems almost immediately. The movie came out in 2019 and bombed.
2017.
2017?
Yeah, 2017.
My apologies.
Yeah.
And bombed. Did not do very well. And then in 2020, Ray Fisher, the actor who played Cyborg,
yes,
came out and accused Whedon of showing gross, abusive, unprofessional, and completely unacceptable behavior towards the cast and the crew, to which many of his colleagues, Jason Momoa was the first, but others came out afterwards, came out and kind of stood with him and agreed with him, like, this was pretty disgusting. He was very casually cruel, and Jason Momoa said some very serious stuff went down.
Yeah.
Not the most elaborate tweet that he could have made, but definitely sticking up with Ray Fisher and being like, yeah, no, he's not wrong. Ray Fisher got kind of left out to deal with all that. Like, he kind of got hung to dry, if you will.
Yeah.
But it opened the floodgates and a lot of people started coming forward. You've had people going back as far as even to Buffy or Angel with Charisma Carpenter, who played on both of them, saying that she was saying he was casually cruel, abused his power on multiple occasions, and when she got pregnant, he would laugh at her, call her fat, asked her if she was keeping the baby, and then mocked her religious beliefs when she said that she was.
Yeah. Rough behavior from a human being.
Right? Especially one who made his career creating this strong female protagonist show, to find out that behind the scenes he's just tearing women down left and right.
I believe he was not allowed to be in the same room with who was it?
Michelle Trachtenberg.
Michelle Trachtenberg, yes, who was a child at the time.
15.
She was 15. Yeah, I thought she was 16, but still,
nope.
That's
that
not
says
good.
A lot.
It does, and that's not like an idle
contract.
thing. Yeah, that's not an idle thing of like, oh, he's just like, he's crazy. No, like that's serious business there.
Yeah, when you have to write that into your contract, there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
So that's gross. And she's come out and made comments about it and about how uncomfortable he made her, saying that Buffy was a toxic workplace, and it starts at the top.
I think it's very interesting too. Sarah Michelle Gellar, the titular Buffy, has never said anything except to express, I think she has had one comment saying that she stands with Charisma Carpenter, and then that's about all she's ever said about her experience on the Buffy set, which probably tells me that she did not have a good time.
Yeah. Sarah Michelle Gellar, David Boreanaz, James Marsters, Amber Benson all came out in support.
Yes.
But as far as I can tell, none of them really added to her story in any way. They just kind of were like, yeah, he was kind of
I believe Marsters, had his own story. I don't know if you were going to get into that, where I'm pretty sure it was Marsters, where Joss apparently held him up against the wall, like choked him out, basically saying, like, I don't care how much the fans like your character. You're dead, buddy. You're dead.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because I have a quote from James Marsters where he was not quite, but almost standing up for him, saying he put an enormous amount of pressure on himself trying to accomplish something that was a very high bar. The context behind the article that I was reading there was he was saying, like, he was under a lot of stress. He put himself under a lot of stress, and so sometimes he would have outbursts. I'm not saying that justifies it, and for the record, James Marster was not saying that justifies it. But it was just kind of that, like, maybe there's a little explanation behind it, and maybe that's why James Marster stuck around for all those years.
Which, I mean, people have different opinions. People see different things too, right? So, like, maybe that happened to James, but he didn't see some of the other stuff that happened. So he just assumed, oh, this guy's under stress, because TV situations can be very stressful. And it's not uncommon for outbursts to happen. But when it gets violent like that, that's a serious situation.
Yeah. Apparently, he in early 2021, Gal Gadot came forward saying that it was not she was trying to be
she's being very political about it. Yes, very diplomatic.
She was like, "Oh, it wasn't the best set to be working on."
Yeah.
And then came out later with a story about how Joss wanted her to do basically to sexualize her character more, and she didn't want to do that. She didn't think that was true to the character, and it wasn't true to who she was.
Yeah.
And Joss Whedon threatened to make her career miserable.
Yep.
Then he later denied it and was like, "Oh, well, her English is bad, so she just didn't understand me." Which is that's just dirty all on its own.
I know. Like Joss really does not know how to help himself.
No.
It's wild. It drove Ben Affleck to drink. Ben Affleck has repeatedly said that the Justice League reshoots were the worst experience of his life. Famously, the cinematographer of Justice League said that Whedon reshot 75% of the movie, which you can tell when you watch the Snyder Cut. There's really only a handful of shots that are used.
Yeah.
And like ruined it so badly that him and Christopher Nolan, when they saw it at the premiere, Christopher Nolan was pissed and vowed to never let Zack watch what Joss did to his movie. Knowing how personal it was, how personal it was for the cast and everything, he wanted to shield his friend from what Joss had done to his child.
Well, because Zack was building something, whether you liked it or not, he was building something, and in a lot of ways, this movie not only was a bad movie, but ruined the actors behind it who are making the movie to the point where Ray Fisher has not been in anything that I'm aware of since then.
Well,
Ben Affleck has straight up said, "I'm not doing Batman again," which he's kind of broken down on. He has done little cameos here and there.
Yeah.
But he's still adamant he's not going to direct anything for the DCU. He doesn't want to be Batman in a live action movie, which sucks.
I know. God, I would love that, but it doesn't seem like they're treating him well. So, like, props to Affleck, right?
No. Conversely, Whedon said that the Justice League was the rudest set that he'd ever worked on as well. So it went both ways. Nobody wanted to be there, apparently.
Which, I mean, that I believe. I believe any rudeness, though, is coming in response to Whedon. Because especially, like, it was such a very delicate situation. Like, Zack works very intimately with all of his actors. They give him a lot of authorship over the characters. Like him, Ray Fisher, and the writer Chris Terrio all got together for numerous meetings to develop the character and backstory of this version of Cyborg to make sure that Ray felt like he had a certain ownership of it. Same deal with Ezra Miller in The Flash and Ben Affleck in Batman and everybody. And then to have Joss come in and just take over the ship, reshoot it, try to make it into a weird Marvel movie, get them to do a lot of cheesy, dumb stuff. He told Ray, what did he say? I don't take notes from Robert Downey Jr. Why the bleep do you think I'm going to take notes from you?
Yeah.
Which is
sounds like I'm taking notes, and I don't take notes. If I don't take notes from Robert Downey Jr., what do you think I'm going to take quotes from you?
Yes, that's the quote. That's the quote. Yes. So I feel like he came into it very hostile, or at least didn't show the proper respect that you do, especially when the director left because his child committed suicide. Like that is the most horrible thing that I could imagine happening. And so to come in and sort of take over so disrespectfully, like I bet it was a rude set. I bet it was.
And a lot of these actors would, I believe, considered Zack Snyder a friend. Like they came back from multiple movies for him. So they're probably feeling his loss with him to some extent. And then have this other guy come in and be like, all right, we're changing everything. Like, this isn't what we signed up for.
Exactly. And he's not even listening to them. There's no collaboration. There's no nothing. It just, I get it. I 100% get it.
Now, conversely, I couldn't find any Marvel actors who'd spoken out against it. Now, whether I missed those tweets or not, I don't know, but I've not heard any controversies, nor could I find anything from either of the movies.
I did find that very strange, too. Now, I wonder if they are under some very ironclad contracts, some weird NDAs. I wonder if maybe Joss wasn't a lunatic on those sets. Maybe he was on his meds. Like,
who knows? But that's interesting that he
I'll never
came and
know.
did 2 movies and didn't piss off anybody enough to say anything.
Mm-hmm.
And yet he did 1 movie and made everybody's life hell.
Right?
So that being said, will you continue to watch Joss Whedon movies?
I will probably continue to watch old Joss Whedon movies and shows purely on the strength of the art. Like, Firefly is amazing. I've never watched Buffy. That was a bit before my time, and I had never gone back. But I feel like that is one I would like, and I probably would wind up watching eventually. I will obviously watch the Avengers movies again because I'm a mark for the MCU. Like, I'm going to rewatch those. But I don't know if you had heard, he had that new show on HBO, The Nevers.
He got removed from that.
Yes.
So they're still using his name, but that's pretty much all he's got to do with it.
Well, it was already filmed when he got removed for it. So they took the name off, but he had done he had written it, they'd shot it.
But they only did, like, it's a TV show, right? So they've only done 1 season?
Yeah, they've only done 1 season.
Yeah,
so going
forward, he will have nothing to do with it.
But that first season, I did not watch. Especially because it was still pretty soon after Justice League, as the internet affectionately calls it.
I don't know about affectionately, but I know what you're saying.
So yeah, I just couldn't watch that. I probably won't watch anything else that he does going forward. But the old stuff, I feel like that's still fair game to me because it is so good.
Yeah, they're 100%. I'm going to watch the Avengers again. I do rewatches of the whole series. It's going to happen. As far as Firefly and Buffy go, I've seen all of Buffy. I have fond memories of Buffy. It might be one of those things that just is so firmly in the 90s that going back to it in 2023 just might be awkward.
Yeah.
But that being said, I have love for a lot of the cast members. I really like David Boreanaz. I really like Seth Green. Sarah Michelle Gellar is great. Charisma Carpenter's pretty good. I can't remember Xander's real name, and I apologize for that. But like the actual cast, Giles, the actual cast is really strong and really good. And I think that's one of the things that will let me get past it is because if you're watching Buffy or Firefly, you're not only supporting Joss Whedon, you're supporting everybody who went into that. And unlike Kevin Spacey, you don't have to look at him.
Yeah.
You can just look at the... Yeah, right? So I'm not necessarily opposed to going back to Joss Whedon material, but at the same time, I haven't gone back to it in so long, and I'm not itching to go back to it tomorrow. So it's like, I don't know. Other than the Avengers, it might be completely in my rear view.
Which, that is fair, honestly, because I mean, it seems like his career's in the rear view too. I don't know that he's gonna be doing much going forward.
Not anytime soon.
No.
All right, what's next?
Next we got James Gunn.
No.
Good old.
This one I'm curious about because I didn't know there was much controversy here at all. So take the stage.
Okay. So James Gunn, he got fired. He got fired because a bunch of, I believe it was Troll Group, was trying to do a deep dive to expose all these cancel culture. So they did. They found all these old tweets and they blasted the internet with them, and that got him fired from Guardians of the Galaxy, which wound up letting him go over to DC. They got him to make the Suicide Squad. That made no money, but was pretty well received, and I think is a very good movie. That led to him getting the DC Films gig. Now he is the CEO of DC Films, and he got to go back and do Guardians of the Galaxy 3 even still, so he got to have his cake and eat it too. The problem is some of these tweets are very, 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 very gross, and not only that, there's a recurring theme of pedophilia and sexual abuse running through them, and some of them are in a jokey sort of way, not good jokes, but in a jokey sort of way.
Not those
but when
good
you just
pedophilia jokes.
Yes, but I'm just hedging my bets. Maybe somebody could find a funny way to do it, but James did not. He very, very gross stuff. I would hesitate to read some of this stuff. I do have the tweets in front of me.
Let's
I can
just
sort
not.
of bleep stuff that. That's fair. Very gross stuff. It's not fine if you want to find. And also, it bears to be said, he was a 35-year-old man when he was saying some of this stuff, even if it was 10 years ago.
Yeah,
and
you
then
can't get away with innocence
to
abuse.
make matters even worse, in 2011, exactly right. It's one thing if you're 18 and doing this stuff. It's another when you're 35 and you make like 14 pedophile jokes a day on your Twitter. But yes, to make matters worse, I know, right? To make matters worse, in 2021, his friend, punk singer Jimmy Urine, who is a self-described pedophile from as far back as 1996, which strange behavior. James put on a pedophile-themed party for Jimmy, and this got outed in court documents when Jimmy was being tried for battery of sexual battery of a minor. This party involved dressing up as a pedophile and bringing your date as a victim, as an underage victim. James attended dressed as a priest, and there are pictures that were released as evidence in the in the party. And this is all just painting a very, very strange picture, is it not?
Yep.
Right?
This isn't the kind of thing you do if you're normal.
No, see, that's the thing. And this one really hurts because I love James Gunn's work. Every single one of his movies I would put up as one of my favorite movies. I love his weird older movies. I loved a lot of the stuff he produces. But the more and more I read about this guy and the more I see his behavior, I cannot respect him as a person. You know, it's weird.
No, that's
very
totally
disturbing material. And then he's also, in less serious allegations, he's been just doing some weird diplomatic, like PR speak in regards to the DC studio stuff. Like, I thought it was very telling that he said, yes, Ben Affleck, we've been having conversations that maybe we'll get him involved in something. He's very excited to direct something in the DCEU. And then a couple weeks later, Ben Affleck unequivocally says, no, I will never do anything in the DCEU. I think he says, I believe James Gunn's an all right guy, but I want nothing to do with what they're doing over there.
Yeah. I respect what they're working on, and I like James Gunn, but I will never direct for DC. And I don't think it was weeks later. I think it was the next day. Like, I think it was...
Was it that soon? Okay.
Just shut it down right away. Because it was like, oh, because James Gunn made that announcement with like 7 different projects.
Yes.
And I think it was like, by the weekend, he was like, no.
I think you're right. It might have been by the end of the week, yeah. Which was, I don't know, it's just weird, like, because Gunn didn't have to say that about Affleck. He could have just said we had meetings with Affleck and it went well. Yeah. But to say that and then have Affleck come out and so unequivocally, like, say, like, no. I just find that's weird, and it makes me feel like he's kind of, like, blowing smoke up people's asses, you know? Yeah. Like, I feel like he's really just trying to be a circus performer. Like, he's just trying to be the ringleader and set a narrative, you know? Yeah. Which I don't really vibe with.
Yeah. I'm learning a lot of this stuff as you're saying it. Like, you did kind of give me a heads up like 2 days ago, but for the most part, this is completely news to me. So I've already seen Guardians 3. I've already seen Suicide Squad and like his other movies. So like, I don't have, unlike most of the other people, I don't have that ability to be like, oh, will I go see his other thing? Oh, I guess I will. Like, I've already done them. And so it's a matter of like, will I go forward and watch again? Like, I'm definitely going to see Guardians 3 again at some point in my life. It's going to happen. But if he makes an independent movie, like not a DC, not a Marvel, will I care to check that out? I don't know. I guess it kind of depends on what more comes out about him, what more happens. But like, even in jest, that's a really weird subject to jest about, and not like a one-off, but to do it repeatedly. And to have a friend who is a self-described pedophile. I don't know how many times I want to say that word or else we're going to demonetize
I know,
with our 3 viewers. But
we haven't lost him yet.
Not yet. We can still work on it. We've got 2 more to go. Um, there's something to be said about the company that you choose to keep, right?
Yes.
And like maybe the guy's hilarious and maybe it's entirely in jest, but that's still a really weird thing to joke about.
Yeah, repeatedly. Like I believe there's an adage that says like if you joke about something 3 times, it's probably truth, you know? So it's like that's not always like a strict rule,
Sure.
but like the more if you keep talking about if you go to a certain well over and over again, it's probably because you're thinking about that well. And in this case, it's a well that is not something you should be thinking about.
That's a well you cover up.
Yeah. But it also remains to be said that in the aftermath of his firing from Guardians, he had all of his castmates, his brother Sean Gunn, wrote a very heartfelt open letter acknowledging that he had a rough past and that he's changed. Although this party happened in 2021, so like I don't know how much he's actually changed, right? And how much is past, right? Because the letter I believe would have been in 2018, 2019. So like I don't know. People can change. I would love for people to be able to change. It just doesn't seem like Gunn is one of them. And that disappoints me because I really, really do like him as a creator. And I find it very interesting that he's the head of DC too, like even with all these allegations.
If you make money, you're going to have a career.
Yeah. Although weirdly enough, the Suicide Squad made no money. It's a huge bomb.
Fair, but Guardians made enough to make over it, I think.
Guardians did. And I think they're hedging on the bets that he's going to make money in the future.
One of the big problems with the Suicide Squad, I won't go super into it, is the fact that it was literally called the Suicide Squad right after Suicide Squad bombed so horribly. I think a different name or a moniker or something under it. It was just a confusing title because it's the exact same title. Anyways, that's not the point of the conversation. Now, the interesting thing with James Gunn, from like, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what you've said, he hasn't technically been accused of anything.
No,
he's made some really off-color jokes and has some really weird friends.
Exactly.
That's kind of the end.
He himself has not. There's no allegations against him. Everybody who's worked with him claims that he's a very good guy to work with. No workplace allegations. No Kevin Spacey weird like gross stuff. But like some of these, like it's strange behavior, and it's enough that if it was another normal person on the street, if it was your coworker, you would probably think that the dude's a pedophile. You know,
well,
like with no evidence. So
interestingly, he's actually got the opposite situation that say Joss Whedon did, where Joss Whedon had people actively like not wanting to work with him ever again. And James Gunn, when he got fired, there were people saying, I will not make this movie unless James Gunn is at the helm.
Yes, so which is wild.
That does say something, I think.
It's either Hollywood is full of pedophiles, or James Gunn is not as bad as people think, or something. I don't know what it is, but it's worth noting, though, for sure.
Yeah.
That of all these people, he is one who has actually had his career trajectory go upwards.
Yeah.
Post allegations.
Yeah. Bounce back.
Yeah. Stronger, even.
Anything else, or should we move on?
That's pretty much all I have to say about Gunn.
Fair enough. The last one that I wanted to talk about today is one of the harder ones for me to talk about, because with a lot of these other people, I could take it or leave it. Whereas for Kanye West, I listen to his music on a fairly regular basis. And he's kind of a piece of shit.
Yeah. That's the long and short of it.
Born in 1977 as Kanye West, that's his real name. He's an American rapper, singer, songwriter, record producer, fashion designer. He is a mogul. Like, he is absolutely an artist in every sense of the word. Started making music in the early 2000s for Rockefeller Records. Started making like the tracks and stuff for them. Made his first debut album in 2004 with The College Dropout, which was a huge success. Has had 10 solo albums including that one, as well as 2 collaborations, one with Jay-Z and one with Kid Cudi. Sold over 160 million records, won 24 Grammys, which is the 10th most of all time, ironically tied with Jay-Z.
Oh, that's crazy.
Has 6 albums on the Rolling Stones Best 500 Albums of All Time.
Wow.
6 of his 10 albums are on their best of list of all time.
Which is well-deserved, I would say. Kanye is a musical genius.
I don't disagree with them, but that's still a staggering number.
It is. It's wild.
And in Time Magazine has named him one of the top 100 most influential people in both 2005 and in 2015. Kanye West is a rags to riches success story, no matter how you look at it. But he's also batshit crazy.
That's the thing, right?
Ever since he came on the scene, he was kind of well known as being like that egocentric, egomaniacal, like
yes,
over the top kind of a person, and that was kind of okay when that's all he was. Like he rubbed people the wrong way, but it was also kind of his shtick.
It made for good like performances. It made for good appearances. Like I'm thinking about the George Bush does not care about black people early on. Like I believe that was 2004, 2005.
It must have been early on.
Would have been, right? Yeah, because Katrina was around then.
Yeah, but yeah, like he's well known for making really outrageous statements like that.
Yes.
And in a weird way that almost, no, I don't want to say that. Like he almost doesn't surprise me because he's been doing it for so long, and it just keeps getting weirder and weirder and weirder. I'm not saying it's okay, but it's just one of those like, oh yeah, Kanye's being Kanye. That's just what he does. He's freaking weird.
The wild escalation is what surprised me, from just being like a normal egocentric to, oh, this is a weird dude who will just watch porn with you while you're hanging out. Do you ever hear that story?
Nope.
Okay. That happened to Ninja from Die Antwoord.
Okay. Oh yes. Yeah, I did hear that.
Yes.
They did like an animated thing of him hanging out with them.
Vice animated that story that he told where he would just they were like playing basketball or something, and they go back to it was Kim Kardashian's house, and Kanye just throws on extreme graphic porn just while he's hanging out talking, as if it's like throwing on the baseball game.
Yeah.
So that's strange behavior, but not like dangerous or like.
And that's what most of this is. Like Kanye hasn't really been in trouble with the law very much, a little bit, but not a whole lot. Has no real allegations against him. But has said some really, really hurtful, harmful, stupid things. Yes. And it kind of all started back in 2009, or at least this is like the first really big one, when Taylor Swift, brand new artist Taylor Swift, received her first VMA award for Best Music Video, I want to say.
I think.
And Kanye West gets up on stage, takes the mic from her, and like in the middle of her acceptance speech is like, hey, I'm gonna let you finish, but Beyonce has the best video of all time. And then gives the mic back to her, and she's just so stunned. She can't finish what she wanted to say. Like she's just like in shocked silence. She's like 18 or 17 or something at this point. Like she's young. And like Kanye is already an icon by 2009. And it's like, what just happened? You can see Jay-Z and Beyonce in the audience just like mortified, like what just happened. Like they were good friends back then. They've separated themselves from him at this point. But that was the first time I was like, that's beyond. Like that's not just bragging. That's like crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Worth noting, because this doesn't get talked about enough, Beyonce, when she won an award later in the night, actually invited Taylor Swift back on stage so that she could accept her award later on, and she came out to a standing ovation, and I think that's incredibly cool. So
that's
huge.
Awesome. I didn't know that at all.
Exactly. Nobody talks about that part of the night. Everybody forgets about that. It's all about how crazy Kanye is. So I just wanted to highlight that for a second. Little glimmer of hope in this incredibly depressing episode.
That's good, honestly.
Kanye continued to make ridiculous statements for quite some time, leading to 2015, again at the VMAs, made an absolutely nonsensical speech that ended with him announcing he's running for president in 2020. 5 years later, and he's like, yeah, I'm running for president, as you well know. And it's like, nobody saw this coming, buddy. What are you talking about?
I forgot he said that.
He actually did launch an unsuccessful campaign in 2020 as an independent that primarily focused it around his consistent life ethic, which is anti-abortion, anti-euthanasia, anti-capital punishment. Not the worst things, not ideal, but
Yeah.
kind of mixed feelings on that. Lost horribly, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
But didn't let that stop him. He is announcing already that he's going to be running in 2024 as well.
Oh, is he? Okay.
So he says. Decided to make that announcement.
Eagerly awaiting that.
He decided to make that announcement while standing next to a white supremacist, which is hilarious because he's black.
Wonderful.
But
wonderful.
Just one of those okay. He has since made
there's some cognitive dissonance going on there.
He has since made such ridiculous comments as slavery is a choice.
He did say that.
Publicly praised Adolf Hitler, denied the Holocaust, and now identifies as a Nazi. He was anti-Semitic for some time, but apparently Jonah Hill turned him around on that by watching Superbad. He decided, hey, you know what? These Jews are pretty funny. And now he's not anti-Semitic.
So thank God for that. The story has a happy ending, ultimately.
I'm sorry. It's hard to say without laughing.
It's wild. When I first heard that, I thought it was a joke or a meme. But nope, that's actually what Kanye said. And it's just... Nothing could have been a more perfect ending to that weird anti-Semitic saga. I don't think it's ended, but...
I'm not defending Kanye in any way, shape, or form. But when he says stuff like this, it's
how can you not laugh?
Sure, exactly. I can't take him seriously. I can't take anything he does seriously. Well, except for his music from the early 2000s,
for sure.
But I can't take anything he says or does nowadays seriously. He's just. It is worth mentioning that he was incredibly close with his mother, and when she passed away, he went through an incredibly dark time, and I'm sure there was a metric ton of cocaine involved there.
Yes.
Again, I'm not saying that makes it right, but just kind of...
It might explain it.
Might explain a little bit of where he's coming from.
That's always what I've been fascinated by. What is going on in Kanye West's head? Is it, rampant narcissism that's just going wild? Is it other stuff? Is it this or that? I would love to be a fly on the wall in some therapy session, and just see what's going on there.
I'm sure he'd be telling the therapist what's what. I don't think he'd be asking for help or looking for answers.
You're 100% true. That would not go well.
No. He's done a phenomenal job of alienating himself from most of his friends. As I said, Jay-Z and Beyonce don't talk to him anymore, and they were super close back in the day.
Yeah.
Alienating himself from a lot of his audience. His most recent albums have gotten pretty decent critical praise, but nowhere near the numbers that his first albums were getting.
Yeah.
And I have to assume that that's not just, the music industry going the way that it is. I have to assume that's a lot of... Well, even I just said, I was a big Kanye fan. I haven't listened to his three most recent albums at all.
Yeah. So that's saying something then. If
right?
Yeah.
I still go back and I still listen to tracks from his earlier stuff because they're more nostalgic for me.
Yes.
It's as dumb as this sounds. Even though I'm listening to his voice and his words,
yes,
I don't think of Kanye when I'm listening to them. Hey Mama is a song that still hits regardless of who he is or what's going on in his life.
Exactly.
If that doesn't resonate for you, if you think that that's terrible and you can't possibly support Kanye West because of the things he said, I totally understand that and I respect it. Just for me, those songs are ingrained in me. They're on my playlist. They're part of who I am. I haven't gone through an entire Kanye CD in quite some time, but some of his songs are still on playlists of mine and will probably continue to be for quite some time.
I think a good thing to remember when it comes to separating art from the artist is that I believe that after the artist finished and shipped out, I don't believe it belongs to the artist anymore. I believe it belongs to the audience then. And then the audience builds its own relationship to that piece of art. A song does not belong, legally it does, monetarily, but emotionally, the emotions that you feel when you listen to a song do not belong to Kanye West and might have nothing to do with Kanye West, even though it's his song. David Lynch has an idea that art is like catching a fish. You do not create an idea, but if you are receptive, you can catch an idea. Ideas exist in the ether, and that is why we relate to them, because they are in the communal consciousness, and then you are just a conduit. that takes that idea out of the communal consciousness and brings it into the real world.
Okay.
Which that's a philosophy I've always jived with. And it helps me separate art from the artist in that way, because ultimately, yeah, you're just catching the idea, you're bottling it and providing it to the world. You're not like, it's not, and some people might be meant for certain ideas, like maybe they have gone through experiences that allow them to perfectly capture certain ideas, but I believe most of this stuff does come from a communal consciousness somewhere else, from another dreamlike realm, honestly, not to get so esoteric about it, but art exists outside of the artist's brain, essentially.
Which is totally fair.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how far down that rabbit hole I personally follow you, but I understand what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you listen to Kanye West at all? Do you listen to, have you ever, would you ever?
So
it's just such a turn off. You're like, nah, I'm good.
No, so I wouldn't consider myself like a mega fan. Like I haven't listened to all of his albums, not even all of the ones that are considered good, but I do love him as an artist, and like every song I do listen to has been great. I have very fond memories of listening to some of his first albums, like younger, getting into hip hop for the first time, and like even to this day, nothing quite sounds like him. Like his arrangements are very rich. There's a lot going on, but it never seems like it's drowning anything out. Like he walks a very fine tightrope, and I think he pulls it off brilliantly. So I've always had an appreciation for him as an artist that way.
Yeah.
And I feel like I probably would, like, I'd at least listen to some of the albums just to see, you know, like.
Funnily enough, this is just a quick little aside, and then we'll move on to the last person we're going to talk about tonight. I bought College Dropout, which is his first album.
Yep.
Listened to it in the car and went, this isn't for me. Like, I liked the song that was on the radio, but I was like, this isn't for me, and I put it aside. And I revisited it maybe like once, and it just, Okay. And maybe like 6 months later, that I was like, I'll give it another go, and absolutely fell in love with it. And it was just like, this, I wasn't ready for it yet.
Interesting.
Listened to it, fell in love with it. The next one came out, which was Late Registration.
Yeah.
The exact same thing. Bought it, listened to it. Nah, I don't know. I went back to the first album. 6 months later, listened to Late Registration. Yeah, no, this is a great album.
Nice.
Third album, exact same thing. Like it's just weird. He's just one of those artists. Like he's a little bit ahead of my curve. Listened to it, couldn't do it. Listened to it 6 months later, absolutely loved it. Then 808 and Heartbreaks came out, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna hate this. And then they come back to it and absolutely love it. 12 years later, I still hate that album. Just cannot get it with it at all.
Interesting. I like it. I could see why you would hate it though, because it's definitely like,
it's so auto-tuned and overproduced. It's just not for me.
It is.
But breaking the trend. My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely in love with the first time I heard it.
Nice.
Just such an amazing album, beginning to end. I don't know if it's perfect per se, but it's
perfect for you at least.
It's his best piece of work. It's his best artistic piece, if you will. Anyways, who's the last one we're going to talk about?
Okay, so the last one we're going to talk about will be Ezra Miller, the man of the hour himself.
Topical.
Indeed. Okay, so Ezra has been accused of many, many, many things. Summer of Terror running throughout Hawaii and Iceland over the past little bit, which has definitely altered the perception. Almost every little bit online you see of Ezra Miller is caveating with, well, they should be like punished for the crimes. Like, oh, it's so crazy that this happened to X person, but Ezra Miller hasn't been punished for their crimes. But I feel like setting the record straight here a little bit. Of the actual crimes that they have been actually accused and like arrested for, they've been punished accordingly for all except for one, which we don't know exactly what's happened. So let's run through it a little bit.
Okay.
So the first thing that happened that started this whole reign of terror was a short video of Ezra appearing to choke out a woman in Iceland and take her to the ground. This was a 7-second video that appeared out of nowhere, no lead up, no like aftermath. The woman herself has never come out to say anything about the case, except to say "Don't bother me" on Twitter, essentially. The woman who videotaped it, I believe, did have some stuff to say, but nothing like they never accused of like choking out this woman. It's such a weird situation because there's no police reports, even though Variety reported police being involved. And then a year after the incident, a woman claiming to be the woman in the video comes out and is now trying to stir up things against Ezra Miller. When you watch the video, it does look like Ezra Miller. Comfortable defending it, but there is weirdness to the story. Like, I feel like if it was a woman, would have come out and said to me, I am matches against them, or at least
you're cutting
happen,
up,
you know,
really badly.
But it's real stuff. Am I? Oh,
you were there. Just the last like two sentences have been really choppy.
To do anything here quickly. Nothing I can really do. Let's just hope it doesn't happen again. Let me know if
you've been fine the whole night, so it's just a little hiccup or something.
Okay. But okay, so besides the Ezra Miller choking incident, there has also been accusations of assault in a bar. Ezra was accused of assaulting a man in a bar and apparently has gotten away with it. However, when you watch the arresting video, the story that seems to have played out was the man was describing himself. The victim was describing themselves as a Nazi, was yelling homophobic slurs at Ezra, and so Ezra turned on their phone to videotape it, and then went and spit in the man's face. This started a fight. The cops got called. Ezra, since they started it, got charged with disorderly conduct, not assault. Ezra never assaulted anybody. But tell the internet that, right?
I mean, you did just say he spit in the guy's face. That is technically assault. But...
Well, okay, fair. I mean, but that is different, I would say, than punching somebody. You know? Especially provoked, unprovoked. Do I agree? I probably wouldn't have done that, and I agree that they got charged with something, but I don't think that this is a horrible crime the way that the internet is making it out to be, and that Ezra is this monster who's out of control. I'm just going to run through some things quickly, and then we can go back and talk about things in depth, because there's a lot, obviously, going on here. But the other big allegation is allegations that Ezra was grooming Takata Iron Eyes, a Native American girl who has been doing nonprofit activist work. They met Ezra through the nonprofit when Takata was young. So that's where this rumor starts. But there has been no evidence of any like close friendship until 2021, when Takata was a grown woman, and there's no evidence of a romantic or sexual relationship at all. Ever. There's never been that. Most of the grooming allegations have come from Takata's abusive father, who is known to be a controlling, abusive father. They very transparently do not agree with Tokata's. She She believes herself to be non-binary. Like she's come out as non-binary. She calls herself a twin spirit. Her father does not believe, like, is not cool with that at all. She ran away. Chase Iron Eyes, the father, has come up with this weird scheme to get her back in collusion with a stalker, Ezra Miller's most notorious stalker, a woman by the name of Ren. Oh, I have it right here. Oh, sorry. I messed my notes up. It's down there. But a woman named Ren has been stalking Ezra for many, many years, trying to ruin their life for not noticing them, essentially. And this is all documented stuff. They met up with Chase Iron Eyes and have been colluding to create this narrative, which Ren has admitted to multiple times, that this has all been a creation of them to try and get Tokata back under Chase's control, back on the reservation. It all was leading to them trying to get Tokata under a conservatorship because they believed that Ezra had mind controlled her to the point where she could not be on her own, which is all nonsense. Almost every point, if you go point to point of all their allegations, has been incredibly disproved. They said that Ezra stole Tokata's phone because she couldn't be trusted with it. The day that they said that, Tokata is posting like selfies and stuff on her Instagram that like were obviously actually her, not Ezra doing it. Like they said that Ezra made it so that she can never leave the property without Ezra's like expressed consent. She was in, I believe, Paris at the time that they said that without Ezra, while Ezra's in LA shooting The Flash. So there's just a whole bunch of holes in that grooming story. It holds no weight, besides the fact that like they only became friends when they were both adults. So there really can't be any grooming going on there.
I mean, they met when she was young, though,
at least
right?
There's no
that's
evidence.
Kind of the definition of grooming.
But there's no evidence. They had never been in contact. It was like, oh, hello, I'm Ezra Miller at a, and they reconnect. Oh, hey, you're at that function. Hey, how's it going? Like, there's no text messages. There's no history. Takata's friends have all said, the stalker herself has said that they had never started hanging out until like 2021. So there's just a lot of weird little things going on here.
Fair enough.
And then, so the last big one, there's a couple small ones in between, but the last big one was a burglary charge. Ezra broke into a person's house, stole some stuff out of their fridge, and a big stink has been made that this was a, like, oh, look at Ezra, they must be so crazy drunk just breaking into a random person's house. When you read the court documents, what happened was Ezra, on his mother's behalf, walked into his mother's tenant's house to grab cooking wine and some flour. The mother had sent the tenant a text asking if she could pick up some cooking supplies. The tenant said yes. Ezra goes over and does it on the mother's behalf. And then the friend charges them with felony burglary. I don't know what the story is there, but those are the facts, and that paints a very different picture than what the media has been saying.
Well, I think it's hard to say those are the facts when the only actual fact is that he's been charged for felony burglary.
Well, no, those are the facts according to the police reports. When you read the court documents, those are the facts. Like, I can send you them after the thing here.
That's totally fair. I guess
like,
what I'm trying to
some
say
of this is
that can be the fact of what their mother said. But I mean, if he was officially charged with burglary, some amount of burglary must have taken place.
For sure. And the burglary was a bottle of cooking wine and like a box of flour. Like those were the items that the court determined were taken. Now, why the friend, it was a family friend that is renting the house from Ezra Miller's mother, why they would charge Ezra for felony burglary, I have no idea. Potentially hoping for a settlement payout, knowing that Ezra was in such hot water, they would probably want to pay off something like this as quick as possible. That's the only sort of motivation that comes to mind, but I have no idea what's going on here. But there's a lot of things that aren't quite adding up the way that the media has been describing it, which I find very strange. Like, nobody's reporting that this stalker has admitted to making some of this stuff up, including like showing text messages, like showing her and Tokata's father making stuff up.
Yeah.
Nobody's reported this burglary. Nobody reported what the actual story was. And I also think it was weirdly convenient that this summer of madness happened in and around the time there's been a major LGBT, like anti-LGBT wave sweeping across America with against trans and non-binary people. And I believe that some right-wing journalist or media group or something has been using him as a scapegoat to be able to at the very least, just to generate clicks. If there's not any more like sinister motivation behind it than that, I think that's enough. Like, because it certainly would have made them some money. That was a huge like series of stories in that summer that probably kept the lights on.
Maybe. This is one that I bump up against you with, because as I said earlier, there is a point where if there's enough smoke, there's got to be a fire somewhere. And sure, maybe he's an easy target after the first thing happened, but like, he's been around for 6 years and 3 of them have been tumultuous, where you've got actors who've been around for 50, 60 years and have never once had a claim against them. And it's just, I don't know all the facts and details of the situation. I did a little bit of research on Ezra Miller, but not to the extent that you did. And some of it sounded very damning, and not from news outlets. Now, obviously, news outlets can get it wrong, but I feel like we've got a different picture of Ezra at the moment.
And I believe that is because I have seen a lot of these documents and I've seen a lot of this stuff. It is the sort of thing that, like, me rambling on a podcast, sort of going around the, like, trying to succinctly describe it, it's going to be less believable than if you're actually looking at court documents or watching the arrest videos or things of that nature.
For sure. We are not a serious news outlet. Don't take any of this as facts. We're just having an interesting conversation. We're just hopefully an interesting conversation.
Exactly. One thing also with Ezra is that Stalker has also been she has been revealed to be at least one source of one of the major reporters who had been writing these stories on Ezra Miller. So if this reporter is getting their information from somebody who is a bad source, they don't, like, it's Variety. Like, they're not Walter Cronkite.
Yeah.
Like, they don't really have journalistic integrity. It's literally all about selling. Like, it's all about selling ads. It's all about clicks. So if she has to choose between a sexy story that might not be true or a boring story that might be true, she's probably going to choose the sexy story. Especially if she has a source, you know? Doesn't matter if that source is right or wrong. They're like, so I don't know. There's some funny business going on there. The choking thing is like the most damning, and that's like, I mean, they choked a woman like that. If that is true, if that is what happened, that's pretty messed up.
I'm watching the video off to the side here, and it's not great, but it's also not like. Like, if you were to tell me that he's showing
It's
her
not
like an
definitive.
acting move or something like that, I would
Yes,
buy it. Like, it doesn't look.
because
It's
that's the
horrible to say it doesn't
defense.
look inherently violent. He's choking a woman and throwing her to the ground, but like it doesn't
Yes,
look the
angry.
yeah, it doesn't look
She's
quite like you
smiling.
would if you're like looking to
Look
cause
at her face.
damage.
She's smiling the whole time. Because that is the well, like
Yeah,
at least
I see what you're saying.
like there is a smile. There is a smile. Because that is the defense of that, is that what happened was the woman comes up and is like, oh, I want to, like, I think I could take you in a fight. Let's fight. And Ezra shows her a stunt move, basically taking her down, puts the hand on the collarbone, sort of like moves her center of gravity. And then if you look carefully, you can sort of see him go down and like brace her as she falls. But it's not conclusive. You don't really see much, and it's only a couple seconds.
It's a
So,
very
like,
short video that just is on loop.
I could believe either story, to be honest with you, because I guarantee Ezra's a wild person who gets into drugs and alcohol, but I think a lot of actors are, and a lot of people are, and they don't always go on violent, weird sprees. I do believe maybe that could have happened in that case with the woman, but I don't think there's enough there to damn them. But I do believe that was enough to start a narrative that when another thing happened, now you really have some stuff. And if like two coincidences happen shortly thereafter, like now you've got a narrative that you can start to create. And now things are happening. Now you have people seeking to sell stories to outlets like, oh, I met Ezra Miller, I'll tell him that he stole my wallet and I filed a police report. But I never filed a police report because that would be illegal, because he didn't steal my wallet. Which is a thing that happened. I don't know. I think that they're like, of all of the people we've talked about today, I think that Ezra Miller has the best case for innocence, or at least mostly innocence. Like, I'm not saying that they're an angel, but the way that the internet is treating them is like that they are a spawn of the devil who has been running around the world unchecked, causing horrible devastation, when they stole some rice wine out of their friend's fridge and spit on maybe a Nazi.
I mean, we're each going to walk away with this one with a different take. You are downplaying a lot of what is being accused of pretty heavily, and I understand that you've read some of the, gone further in depth maybe, but I'm not saying he's necessarily the spawn of Satan or anything like that, but at the same time, I wouldn't invite him in my home.
What's so like, we don't have to get into it now, but what is one of the things that you're like, what are the big things that you're bumping up against here? Like, what are one of the big accusations there that
I don't have it in front of me. I was going through an article the other day and it just kept going. Like, it wasn't necessarily,
I just hit the big three. There are a ton of allegations.
And that's what I kind of
many of them
hit up against is it's I don't know. I hate to keep going back to the smoke and fire thing, but like, it's hard to say like, oh no, he's totally innocent of these 39 things that 38 separate people have all accused him of. It's like, at some point,
see,
you gotta wonder.
I would mostly be with you here, except that at least 3 of these allegations are provably from Chase Iron Eyes generating completely fake stories. And a couple more of these allegations, like one, so there was a woman who filed a temporary restraining order against Ezra because they thought that their child was in danger. They were living with Ezra at the time. Ezra had extracted them from a violent home. They had stood up to their abusive boyfriend. This is all like on the record stuff. Then that woman files a temporary restraining order against Ezra, but then recalls it. And when spoken to by journalists, she said, oh, well, I was just afraid for my child because I read all this stuff in the news. So it starts to become this self-propagating organism where she believed the stuff in the news, so she did a thing. And then that becomes another story that keeps the thing going. When Ezra hadn't done anything, and she had claimed as much. She had felt nothing wrong. Ezra had helped her in a situation, but she had heard all this stuff in the news and thought that something was up. and so did it. Like, so there's like putting the cart before the horse sort of thing. And there's just a bunch of these sort of stories that like, nope, like Kevin Spacey doesn't have like people coming out and saying, well, actually these 30 men that are accusing him are making stuff up. Nobody's coming out and saying, well, actually I was there on that night that Anthony Rapp got touched and never happened. But there are people doing that with Ezra,
which is fair.
Close friends of Ezra, like court documents are supporting alternative narratives than what the media is giving us. So there is like actual evidence here, unlike some of them, that some of this stuff might be trumped up.
Fair enough.
And it doesn't mean that you have to like them as a person, like not you specifically, but anybody, or believe things like one way or the other. Like make up your own mind, read what's out there, try to find the evidence, and I don't know, make a judgment call.
No, that's fair.
But do these allegations did they affect your enjoyment of The Flash at all?
It's hard to say. Shall we just move into The Flash?
Yeah, I mean, probably a good enough way to segue.
Right. So let's just throw the spoilers up there, just in case anybody is watching. We are going to discuss The Flash in detail. Probably not for super long, because it's already 2 hours, and we got to get out of here at some point. But I will say The Flash was maybe my least favorite part of The Flash.
Interesting. Okay.
Specifically, a lot of the interactions between 30-year-old Barry and 18-year-old Barry just didn't work for me, and I kind of found them really annoying. I enjoyed the movie overall, and I don't think that I was disliking the performance because of Ezra Miller.
Yeah.
But it's hard to say for sure because I knew everything going in.
For sure. I find that a very interesting take because I had the exact opposite experience. I actually really liked the two Barrys. I liked their chemistry together, and I thought that was the glue that actually made the movie work more than I was expecting it to. Like my takeaway was that I'm surprised that The Flash was a functional movie, and I liked it a lot more than I expected it to be. And I liked it as a Flash movie a lot more than I expected to. I thought Keaton and the cameos were going to completely steamroll the entire thing. But the spine is still on Barry Allen. It's still an emotional arc about him. And the other stuff doesn't even come in until about halfway.
I mean, you've got cameos from Wonder Woman and Batman pretty instantly.
Sure, but I don't really count that as like fan servicey cameos because it felt kind of natural for the world. I thought that they worked that in a way where it didn't seem like, oh, well, here's Wonder Woman, here's Batman. Like it felt like, yeah, this is the DC universe. Flash and Batman have a relationship, and Batman and Wonder Woman have a relationship. So it made sense to me, at least. It didn't feel as nostalgia baity.
I'm not saying it felt nostalgia baity, but at the same time, I wanted to watch that Batman movie a lot more than I wanted to watch the Flash movie.
And that is fair. That is fair.
Ben Affleck looks phenomenal. I really like his portrayal. And the CG with him was looking really good. And then we cut over to Barry Allen and the CG babies, and I was like, oh, this is going to be a rough one.
Oh, God. So I was very worried in the beginning there. That first, 20 minutes, I was like, oh, no, this is as bad as everybody was saying. This is my worst nightmare brought to life.
Yeah.
But I thought it actually improved quite well after that. It definitely got better. Start. It was a real rocky start, but I came away from that actually feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah. The CG babies, every part of that was awful.
Oh God. Yeah.
There were some jokes early on where it was really painful. It is worth noting, I watched this movie by myself in an almost empty theater, and that definitely had an impact.
Yeah.
Because laughter is contagious. Right.
Yeah.
So some jokes that might have worked better for me had there been other people around laughing, or like a friend next to me or something.
Yeah.
But just the way that it worked out, I just had nobody to go with. So be it. Ben Affleck, the Batman was incredible. The way he moved was so cool to see. Seeing him in the gray and blue suit was impressive.
Although incredible. I hated that weird armor webbing stuff that he had on the suit. That I thought really took away with it. But that's a minor quibble. It's a minor design quibble.
I didn't have a problem with that, but I understand.
The blue and gray looked good, though.
Yeah. Wonder Woman showing up was cool, although this is such a small little thing, but like she was just so smiley the entire time. Like it was literally like she just came there to hang out with her friends for like 30 seconds, and she was like she was seeing Ben for the first time. She's like, Ben, how are you doing? And like she was just smiling the entire time. I'm like, that's not really what I would expect from this person in a life-threatening situation, but like, okay. The Lasso of Truth of Ben Affleck I thought was hilarious, where he's like, oh, my ego is too strong to take this, or my ego is too strong to allow me to say thank you for something. And I was like, what was that? Like, I hated that line at first, and you see The Lasso of Truth, I'm like, that makes perfect sense.
See, I didn't like that they basically just used that gag again. Like, and it always bugs me when they treat The Lasso of Truth as something that just makes people spontaneously compel their darkest secrets. Like that's never how I've understood it to work in the comics. Like it doesn't make you tell it doesn't make you randomly just tell random truths. It makes you tell the truth. When you speak, you can just not speak. You don't have to say the most embarrassing truth that comes to mind. In fact, you don't have to say anything. But whatever you do say will be the truth.
And that's what I was going to say, is the Ben Affleck one, the ego made me laugh. And then Barry Allen's like, I don't know, I've never had sex. That was like, that was a bridge too far. And like, what was the point of that? Because that is exactly what you're talking about, where it's like, why would you say that in that situation? That doesn't make any sense. But Ben Affleck's, I can't say thank you because my ego is too strong, made perfect sense to me right then, because that's a situation where you would say thank you. Like, you just saved my life. I should say thank you, but I'm not able to do so because of my fragile ego. Wait, why am I telling you that? Oh, crap. Like, that connects those dots. But then being like, I've never had sex is like, well, you're an idiot. Go away. Yeah, again, you're the worst part of this movie.
I probably could have gotten behind that if they didn't also, do the Flash little bit and like have the little Alberto Falcone say, well, oh yeah, I had childhood trauma too. Like, because the lasso is affecting him as well.
Wow, okay. I missed that. But I did hear, and I really appreciated Ben Affleck's like, why do I even fight crime? I should use my money to fight poverty. I was like, that's a pretty awesome call out, because a lot of people have been saying that over specifically the last like decade or so. I was like, okay, that's.
I would have also liked it better if they hadn't already done that gag in Justice League. Like if this was the first time they had done the Lasso of Truth making you say something funny gag, I would have liked it a lot better. But the fact that we've already seen it, it felt lazy to me.
I've completely forgotten Justice League, so I didn't know that we've seen this before.
Okay, yeah, because they did,
and that's not anything like, oh, I'm so good against Joss Whedon. I literally just watched it one time and was like, this is not for me.
Well, consider yourself lucky then.
Yeah.
After that, though, I thought it started picking up pretty well. Although I will say that yes, that CGI in multiple places was god awful. Atrocious. Especially the worst offender was within the Chrono Bowl, I believe he calls it, that time bubble. When there's like the stadium, the arena of the memories, and he's going past and seeing all the different people in his memories. Oh my god, some of that looked awful. They were all digitally created people, and they looked like PS2 cutscene graphics. It was bad. Jake and I looked at each other in the theater, and we were like, oh no, this is the movie that we're watching. Okay.
And for a movie that's been in development for 10 years, I don't understand what the director has come out and said that was an artistic choice that he made.
He's wrong.
No. Either you have done poorly.
He's a liar. Or
you're just straight up lying to try and save face. Because like nobody would purposefully make things look awful like that. And especially like in my review that I put on the channel, like I equated the babies to like that dancing baby meme from like 1998.
Yeah.
Like that's what they reminded me of. It just it didn't work. And like even at the end, as cool as it was seeing like Christopher Reeves and George Reeves and Helen Slater, and Nicolas Cage, like all that was cool. But it was really painful to see at the same time.
Yeah. The Nick Cage one was the only cameo I actually liked, and that is because I love Nicolas Cage, but they also kind of did something with it. We got a little bit more of a taste. I don't know why they thought they had to digitally de-age Cage. Cage was there. They filmed that scene with him.
What?
Yeah, he was there. The director said that they shot that scene with him.
Why does it look so bad?
Because they made him look like he was like he would have in 1993, and it was a mistake. They could have had old Cage rock that mullet and fight a giant mechanical spider the way that John Peters has wanted all these years.
Okay, good. I was gonna say, like, you know the story behind that.
I know the story. Very, very. I laughed so hard when I saw the mechanical spider, and I know John Peters is gonna be losing his shit somewhere.
Because he fought a giant spider in the third act.
They're the most dangerous animals in the animal kingdom.
That cameo honestly was right on par with Donald Glover in Across the Spider-Verse. As just like, that is so meta, and like so many people will not have a clue what's going on there.
Yes.
But it's brilliant and it's amazing, and I thank you for it.
I'm so glad that they did it.
Yeah, it's Kevin Smith. I was listening to him today, and he was talking about it because, of course, Kevin Smith wrote Superman Lives.
I got to listen to that, actually.
Which is where that comes from. Nicolas Cage fighting a giant spider. That was one of the major notes that he received, was that he has to fight a spider in the third act. And when the movie fell apart, he went on and produced Wild Wild West, where he fights a giant spider in the third act. Go figure. But one of the things Kevin Smith was saying, and I thought was really cool as a lifelong Kevin Smith fan, is like he made his start referencing pop culture, and he's lived long enough that now pop culture is referencing him.
Yes.
Because you've got in Star Wars Force Awakens, they talk about having the stormtroopers create. Oh, damn it! The stormtroopers who are janitors, right? Like.
Oh, yes.
John Boyega says that he was a janitor or something like that as a stormtrooper, which goes back to Clerks, where he's like, "What do stormtroopers know about cleaning toilets and stuff?"
Yeah.
You've got mall rats referenced in Captain Marvel, where Stan Lee is practicing for his cameo in that. You've got this spider thing, which, like, I mean, sure, it's a John Peters thing, but it's definitely a Kevin Smith reference as well. Oh, yeah,
everybody's gonna...
Like, I just think it's so cool. Like, I don't know, I'm not even the person doing it, but I just think it's fun to see.
I wish, like, in a perfect world, I would have loved for Nick Cage to actually have a role in this movie. Like, it would have been fun for, like, some other of these cameos to actually be... like roles or people. Like, I think Spider-Verse did this very well, where all the weird little cameos, like Ben Reilly had a role in the movie. He didn't just show up to like wave at the audience. Yeah. He was a henchman for $20.99. He didn't have much of a role, but he had something to do in the movie. It would have been nice for some of these to be more than just weird ghoulish 3D holograms of Christopher Reeves, like silently looking at a rip in space-time, you know?
Well, and even the ones they chose to represent was odd.
It was, wasn't it?
Like, you went with a lot of really old characters that you had to de-age or just straight up use archive footage for.
Yeah.
When you've got, like, Henry Cavill, Grant Gustin, Christian Bale, Robert Pattinson, like all these actors who are actually portraying these people and are around right now, and not a single one of them got a cameo. Like, I think Henry Cavill has a still image in the Chrono Ball at one point.
Yeah, when he's fighting, and he's referenced at the beginning. You see the back of his head. He's like stopping a volcano in Guatemala when they're like, "Oh, well, we called Superman and he's busy."
Yeah. But it was just a really odd choice. And apparently he did film some stuff and they cut it, which...
He did, yes.
I don't know what he did to piss somebody off at WB, but...
I don't know, man. They're just... It's such a mess over there with the DC Universe. I also found it odd that with all these cameos, why wasn't there a Flash cameo? Why wasn't Grant Gustin? Why wasn't John Wesley Shipp, the guy who played the Flash in the 90s TV show?
It would make more sense for him to see other versions of himself than all these versions of other people. And you can't say he's always the same in every universe, because they did show us one version of the Flash that wasn't him.
Yeah.
It would make more sense if they didn't show any versions of the Flash, because then you can be like, okay, Barry Allen is always Barry Allen.
Yeah.
But by showing that one, but nobody else, it's just like, what are you doing?
And you know,
especially, sorry to cut you off. Okay. Ezra Miller went on the TV show The Flash as a cameo. So he's interacted with that universe before. Yes. So why wouldn't you have Grant Gustin come to the movies? Like,
he's met Grant Gustin. Grant Gustin's Flash is canonically the reason why Ezra Miller's Flash is called that. Grant Gustin gives Ezra the name The Flash, and then he brings it back into the DCEU universe.
Really? I never actually got to see it. But...
Yeah. It was cool. So it was actually like a cameo that actually had some sort of consequences to it.
Interesting.
But why
So
not?
weird.
Why not follow up on that? It's wild that they wouldn't do that. And then even weirder, the one Flash they did have, they showed a weird little Jay Garrick cameo in the like black and white George Reeves universe. There's been multiple people who have played Jay Garrick. There are multiple animation like voices you could have done. There was John Wesley Shipp has also played Jay Garrick in the new Flash show, as well as playing Barry in the '90s show. What they did was they did some weird AI conglomeration of a random dude who's nobody in particular, who looks a little bit like John Wesley Shipp as a younger man.
Yeah, but he's come out and said it wasn't him.
So that's even weirder. That's what I was going to get to. That was Teddy Sears that said that.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
And Teddy Sears played a fake Jay Garrick. He was actually the serial killer Zoom who infiltrates Team Flash, pretending to be the hero Jay Garrick, the Flash of another universe. They used a weird AI conglomeration that looks like Teddy Sears mixed with John Wesley Shipp. When only one of them actually played the real character. It just felt very strange and tone deaf. And Teddy Sears claims he's like, yeah, that is my likeness, but I certainly didn't film anything, and I didn't get paid or asked or anything.
Which is very, very sketchy.
Yeah. So like that's weird that they would do that. Honestly, it should have been Grant Gustin as the other Flash instead of a second Ezra Miller. Could you imagine that?
Absolutely. And then you have a great backdoor way to get rid of Ezra if you do decide that he is too problematic and move forward with the other actor.
Exactly.
There's so many things in this movie that make no real sense to me.
There's weird choices.
I enjoy
weird choices were made. Oh, yeah, me too. But I
had
agree.
a good time in the theater, but there are a lot of issues with this movie.
I agree.
I mean, the whole strand of spaghetti thing. Okay, that kind of makes sense while you're watching it. But then again, why does he go back and find the same version of himself? But then again, there's a totally different version of the Flash. So like, why does Batman keep changing, but Aquaman is the same and the Flash is kind of the same once in a while? Like it's just one of those like, it's the same problem Marvel has where there's 3 different Spider-Man, but every single version of Doctor Strange is the same.
Yeah. That. Like, I think Marvel should do a better job of mixing up the variants. I don't really bump up against that too much because, I don't know. I feel like if you were to look at it as like a causal strand of universes, like the ones in this little patch, yeah, maybe they all look like Ezra Miller. But as you go farther down the line in the gradient, maybe this one looks like Grant Gustin. Maybe this one looks like somebody else. Maybe this one looks like Adam Brody, who is going to be the Flash in Justice League Mortal, and so on and so forth. So that it doesn't bother me as much. But I thought it was interesting that they did that so that we could get the Flash origin story without us actually seeing the Flash origin story. Like, we got to see how Ezra Miller's Barry got his powers. We never got to see that before. We got to see how that worked, but through an interesting way, through the lens of an older Barry trying to like recreate the situation. Yeah. I really liked the revelation that Barry was at the original Man of Steel attack, and he tried to help somebody, but he was not able. Like, he was just able to help one kid. I like that quite a lot. I think that helps like. It helps the DC universe feel a little more cohesive, because that's something it sorely needs.
I can see that. It didn't really I didn't strike up against it, but I didn't love it either. It was just like, okay, you were there.
Yeah, which that's fair.
Yeah. I liked a lot of the. There's silly little things, but like a lot of the little touches I thought were really nice. For instance, when they go to Wayne Manor.
Yes.
It looks like Wayne Manor from 1989.
Yes.
Like, everything about it looks authentic to that movie. I'm not saying it is. Like, it most likely isn't. But like that kitchen, shy of going back and rewatching Batman 89, that makes sense that that's the kitchen where Vicky Vale's having
Yep.
her little late night dinner before they go to bed. Like, that makes sense. The
Exactly.
Batcave with those giant like pits
Yeah.
looks like the Batcave that I remember from 1989. It might not be, but it definitely looks like it. I was
That'd be
praying.
good
I was
enough.
praying there was going to be a penny and a giant dinosaur in there.
That would have been so cool.
Just
I
like,
wish-
it wouldn't have made any sense for that, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, we saw Batman early on in his career. Now we're seeing him late in his career, and over his career, he collected these things. No explanation needed. Just that would have been nice.
I would have been fine with that. And I think Keaton's one of the few Batmen that you could get away with having a giant penny and a giant T-Rex in their Batcave for some reason.
Well, like, and he clearly keeps trophies. He kept the Joker's voice box.
Exactly, right?
Which I'm glad they didn't focus on that for too long. It was just this funny, like, look at this weird thing that lasts. Like, it's like, all right.
That was fun. Just a little taste, right?
Yeah. It was so dumb, but at the same time, it was so incredibly Batman that he had a kite shaped like a bat symbol.
Yes.
Like, it was just like that. Yes, that Batman would do that 100%. That's branding.
I loved all the dumb things. He had that little bat tape measure that he used too. That was amazing.
How much do you weigh?
Yeah, there was a lot of great stuff, and I thought Keaton was really, really good in this. I was surprised by the amount of restraint that they showed. Like, Keaton doesn't show up until like at least an hour in, and he's not really in it a lot. But when he is, he hits, and you could tell Keaton was like, he was there to play. I was worried that he was going to be sleepwalking through this because the trailer didn't really sell me on it. All the CGI Keaton stuff and like bright, broad daylight Keaton, it didn't really work for me. But like, in the context of the movie, there was enough there that I could get behind it.
You mean when he was fighting in Russia, like, it didn't look good for you?
I mean, in the trailers, like the little bits of Keaton that we saw from the trailers were always in broad daylight, or they only showed that one shot from the fight in Russia, which was very CGI, where he like dives down and grabs the guy. In the trailer, I didn't think that looked very good, but in the full context of the film, I liked it.
Yeah. The only like nostalgia bait that really bothered me was the "let's get nuts" part. Like, that was just so out of nowhere, and I was like,
you didn't need it.
You didn't need it, and it doesn't. I don't get the impression that's something he says very often.
No.
So why would you bring it up in this situation? And especially, like, even if you'd use it slightly differently, like when they're about to shoot the guy with lightning.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is insane. You ready to do this? All right, let's get nuts. Like, that would be like, okay, that's an interesting callback. But they're like, hey, you want to go fight Zod? You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. And you're just like, nobody talks like that. No. That's dumb. Like, that was painfully cheesy. But for the most part, I really like Michael Keaton in this.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that is like the only real problem I had with it. And Keaton sold it the best he could, I think. That was a writing issue.
Yeah.
Because you don't need it. It was never his catchphrase. Like, I love that moment. It shows how Keaton is a very unstable Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
But that's not a catchphrase. That's not what he says.
In 89, he's trying to get killed, and he's provoking somebody.
Exactly.
Perfect. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
In this movie, he's agreeing to go on a mission. Like, admittedly, it's kind of a suicide mission, but it's still just like, no.
Yeah.
The Bat Wing was really cool. Seeing the Batmobile was really cool. I love that his the cockpit stayed like a gyroscope, so the Bat Wing could roll around. And he just stayed center. I was like, that's well done. I like it.
But the back cockpit doesn't, because he's not really like with people too often.
Yeah.
Because this Batman probably never had a Robin, unless they count the comics as canon, or the unproduced threequel.
Well, he did open up his doorway to all the different bat suits. No Robin suit. That would have been the easiest way to allude to it, and they just nope.
That's a good point.
Batman. So no, I get the impression this is a solo act.
Yeah, no Robin. You could make the art, because in this universe, it would be, it was Marlon Wayans, right? He was going to be Robin. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
So in the original Batman 3 script, before it was scrapped and Kilmer came in, it was going to be Marlon Wayans as a mechanic named like Drake Winston. It wasn't going to be like a canon comic Robin. It was going to be Dick Grayson. And he was a mechanic that winds up, I think they were going to take a little bit of the Jason Todd, in that he winds up like helping out with the Batmobile, and then he gets roped into the whole situation. And it was going to be, Marlon Wayans as Robin.
Interesting.
which they did do in the recent Batman 89 comic book. Like that, it didn't adapt the unproduced script, but it sort of took elements from it, including that Robin being in it. But I don't get that.
I bump up against that a little bit just because I can't picture Marlon Wayans in a serious role,
especially in 1994 at the earliest that would have come out. Oh.
I'm all of a sudden I'm happy they didn't make Batman 3.
It would have been interesting. It would have been something like the Nick Cage Superman, where it wouldn't have been good, but it would have been interesting to see at least.
It would be interesting to go back now and see it. Yeah, having it at the time would have been painful.
People would.
Well, who knows? Maybe it would have been amazing, but yeah. I can't see it.
Better or worse than Batman Forever? Who can say? I like Batman Forever for like of the two non-Keaton ones.
Sure.
Yeah.
I was young when it came out. I remember liking Batman Forever, but it's not something I'm revisiting ever.
No, and you don't.
Anytime soon.
Don't.
All right, it's 2.5 hours in. What's your final thoughts on Flash?
My final thoughts are that I am pleasantly surprised that it is actually a functional movie after having gone through like 6 directors, 10 years of development hell, was steered halfway into production, like not this production, but halfway in its development into becoming a Flashpoint movie out of nowhere, when it was originally just going to be a Flash versus the Rogues movie. I liked it overall. Like I'd probably give it like a 7 out of 10 on a number scale. Has some very big problems. Ultimately, I enjoyed it though more than I thought I would, and I probably will be watching it like more often than I would some of the other DCEU movies.
Fair enough. I think I'm actually ironically a little more generous than that. I really did have a good time watching it. Some of the humor didn't work for me. The CGI was bad, but I did overall find myself having a good time. And I was, as I said, by myself in a mostly empty theater. So if I'd been seeing this with a friend in a packed theater, I think that experience would have gone up, to be perfectly honest.
Okay.
I think this movie drops the ball on some things, but you're right. Like for the fact that it was so many reshoots, so many rewrites, so much stuff going on, over 10 years of being in production limbo. Like the only other thing I can compare that to really is like New Mutants.
Yeah.
And like by comparison, this is art. You know what I mean? Like this is just phenomenal. Was it a fun summer blockbuster? Absolutely. And in that regards, I give it a pretty high score. Is it a good movie? It's not great. It's not great.
It's fine. Like it's not great. It's not awful, but it's a serviceable. It's in the better pack of the DCEU movies. It's in the top half, I would say.
I would agree, but I don't know that that's saying a whole lot.
No, it's not. But it's fine. It's certainly the worst multiverse movie, though, of the last couple years. I will say that.
I don't know. Doctor Strange gives it a run for his money.
Oh, okay.
I will take this over Multiverse of Madness.
No, that's true. I amend my statement. It's the second worst multiverse movie in the past couple years.
That one I will allow you. All right, sir. It is getting late. I'm going to call it a night. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and thank you everybody who hung out with us tonight. That was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed yourselves, and we'll be back next week with a brand new topic. Did we ever decide we were going to do like a top 5 something or other?
Yeah, I don't think we settled on anything, to be honest.
If you've got any suggestions, leave them in the comments below, and we'll catch you next time. Have a great night.
Bye.